Hey, before we get started with this week's episode, I wanted to, give a message out to the listeners. The all one of you. I'm just kidding. Two of you, or whatever it is. No, it fluctuates. Actually, I got a few thousand on one of them, on a few of them, but that's beside the point. First, I want to apologize for not putting out content consistently for the last few months. Uh, I've been it just my life has been a whirlwind the last few months. From I got an academic scholarship to start school, and I'm doing a science-based, medical degree program, and so it's been very difficult because my background's not in science or medicine, and that's been taking up my time. I from class to studying and all those other things, and then on top of that, I had a health condition that, I don't know if I disclose it on the podcast, but, I have a heart condition. Well, I had a heart condition, and not just a heart condition, a whole heart and, vascular system condition. It was pretty bad, and put me in the hospital. It was life-threatening, and I went through some stem cell treatment, for that condition, not just for my heart, but for the vascular systems, veins and arteries, and it was successful. I was cleared, to return to my regular training and fitness regimen in life. But remember, I'm in school too, like, so it was just going like crazy. My life was going like crazy, and then I got hit in the mouth training jujitsu, and it not only cracked my tooth, it cracked my jaw. So I had to get surgery, and I got dental concrete put in, or whatever it's called. And so now I finally have time to put these episodes together, but it's still very time consuming. Like the episode you're going to listen to now or watch, it's my friend Ron. Um, and we filmed this episode last year, but I hadn't had time to edit it because when you have an episode, let's say it's 1 hour long, I have to rewatch the episode and clean it up and edit it and plus. So you're looking at another hour on top of that, plus another hour, additional hour pulling out social media stuff, cleaning up, putting the intro, whatever else you're gonna do. Well, my episodes are usually at 2.5, sometimes 3 hours. That becomes very intensive. So you just extrapolate. And so I finally got time to edit this. And there's actually a blessing that's come from all of this is that um I got in contact through a friend of mine, with a church that's willing to work with me on this podcast and do the filming and editing for me so I could just go in and shoot and they will edit and I'll leave. They're doing it for very minimal of what the going rate is. For video at production, it's expensive, and they're willing to do it, on the cheap for me. So, um, that was gonna give me the ability to film, put out episodes consistently, weekly, like I was planning and supposed to do. So from this day forward, there should be episodes coming out once a week. And I say should be because that's the goal and it should occur. Worst case scenario every 2 weeks, but definitely once a week. And I just want to thank you guys for coming back to listen to this episode. It's episode 18. My friend Ron, who's doing big things in East LA. And it's it's starting in East LA. I have a feeling that this thing that he's doing in East LA is going to expand all over the United States and become a good thing nationally. With that said, there's references like this coming year, 2025, because this was filmed in 2024. And I apologize again. And Ron, I'm sorry, bro. I was busy, but hey, it's out now. It's all in God's timing. So here we go. I hope you guys enjoy the episode.
Juan, welcome to the podcast. And please continue your story. We're in the middle of a story, and I wanted to hear the rest of that, if you don't mind. We're talking about guys rolling and going easy. You're talking about as an instructor, you're a broker of information.
Oh, I just think that jiu-jitsu is in a good place right now because you can't broker information, so everybody sees what's out there in jiu-jitsu. whether it's the level of instruction, whether it's the culture, whether it's somebody holding somebody back or allowing them to be their best self. It just keeps the jiu-jitsu community as a whole more honest because people have options.
Yes. It's not, yes, they have more options, but the options are also not just of schools, but of, you can't pull the wool over their head. Like when I started back in the 90s, I would roll with an advanced guy, right? And I would say a black belt, and they would do something, and you go, what was that? And then go, just time on the mat, my friends. Like,
Yeah, or
no, you did something. There's something here, but they didn't tell you.
Yeah.
We were stuck to close guard, half guard, and that's it. And just there was a level of hidden information.
or take a private if you want to know.
Yes, but you would never get enough to beat them in that position, you know. And that's one thing that tripped me out. Sorry, before I go down that road, that's one thing you can't hide anymore because I can just go on YouTube and go side control escape from whatever. And I'm like, that's what he did. That's exactly what he did. So if you're going to be a crooked broker, that's gone now. That ability's gone. So,
But I think it plays out in for example, I look at the analogy of a jiu-jitsu school like a family.
yes.
And for my kids, I don't want myself or anybody else to limit their full potential. I want them to exceed my potential and become great. So I'm not going to hold back information for my own children because I want them to be their best self. And if I look at my students just like my kids, which I treat everybody just like my kids, I'm not going to hold them back. Like sometimes I'll show something to one of my students and I tell them, I'm going to regret doing this, but I'm going to show you this because it's a way to, deconstruct my game or whatever it is. But it's like, I want the best for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I say the same thing, but I say a little different. Same thought concept. I tell them, hey, listen, I'm going to show you something. Excuse me. As well done the wrong part. That's out. I tell them, excuse me. I tell them, I'm going to show you something, but you have to agree not to use it on me. And they start laughing. And I'll show them the same thing. You can go ahead. Sorry. Wow.
You like it?
Yeah, you like it. It just, yeah. So yeah, but hey, thanks for coming out here from LA. Are you based in LA? Like, I know you have a gym in Fullerton.
Correct. I was born in East LA. Then we moved to Whittier when I was younger. And then actually, when I first got married, I moved down here to San Clemente. Lived here for 2 years
Okay.
in my grandma's house. And then I moved back to La Habra, which I guess I'll get into when I get into my story of why I moved back to La Habra. And then I've just been living in La Habra ever since. But I spend every day in East LA. So I kind of commute between La Habra and East LA.
Yeah, that's one thing you and I have in common. I used to commute out to East LA to teach for years, and it's a very interesting place. It's a very special place. So, for people that don't know your story, which you have a very interesting story, do you mind if I just do this? No matter, I'll do it interview style. No worries, just kind of talking and flowing or whatever. But I know that you're a believer. You're a Christian. How did your journey into your faith, your journey of faith or walk with Christ, how did that start? And how did that start?
So I wasn't raised as a believer at all. My dad's Japanese, my mom's Chinese. My dad grew up Japanese during World War II in East LA. Kind of angry, came back from internment camp at 11 years old. All their stuff was gone and just mad at the world. Fight a lot. Got my mom at Garfield High School in East LA. And she was like a beauty queen and he was sort of the rebel and he was Japanese, which a Chinese person dating a Japanese right after World War II was not cool because nobody liked the Japanese. So,
This is crazy.
Yeah.
Society is crazy, dude.
Well, the Japanese were not nice.
I know that, but Chinese, it's like, like we're Asian. It's still Asian, bro. Like,
Because, a lot of people don't know this, but East LA was very diverse back in the day because it was basically anybody that couldn't afford to live over there lived over here.
okay.
So it was Jews, Italians, Chinese, Japanese, Mexicans, everybody lived over there.
Yeah.
And so growing up that way, it was like go to school, make a lot of money, be a good person. That's kind of how I was raised. And like most kids, so I was born in 1969. So in the 80s, in the 70s and the 80s, I pretty much raised myself. My mom and my dad were working. My mom was a school teacher. My dad owned his own business in pest control. And we had 20 kids on our street and we raised ourselves. We did whatever we wanted to do.
Were you in that generation? Because I was on the tail end of it. Latchkey kid. Were you a latchkey kid? Like your parents just gave you a key and you got into the house?
Yeah, I mean, my grandma was there, but we pretty much, like when I was 15, I was going surfing with my buddies in Mexico for like weeks at a time, like before cell phones, right? And I would just call them when I got there on a payphone, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Be careful.
Yeah." And I mean, it wasn't the ideal. I think I have such a heart now for kids because I basically had to raise myself emotionally and spiritually, and I had to figure it out. And when you're in that space trying to figure it out, and all your friends are trying to figure it out as well, there's a lot of things you never figure out, or it takes you a long time to figure out. And I think that wisdom is learning from somebody else's mistakes or somebody else's experience. So if I could help an 18-year-old or a 25-year-old figure it out a couple of years faster than I did, with a lot less grief, that's big for me because, you know, I went through typical Asian childhood. I went through, I think it was predestined for me to be a lawyer, or somebody said, "Oh, Ron likes to argue, he should be a lawyer." And ever since high school, I went 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, 3 years of law school, and I was 24 years old and I was practicing law. And I didn't really even know what lawyers did, nor did I even like lawyering, but I was a lawyer. But that's just the way it went. You know, you just kind of did what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me a long time to actually figure, it sounds so cliche, but to figure out the meaning of life, because I was just doing what everybody else wanted me to do, which is another thing we can touch on later on, which is the fear of man. Like you're doing something because of what everybody thinks about you, which I think if I was suffering from that in the 80s, I think in 2024, everybody's suffering from that because of social media.
Yeah.
So I grew up in this place where, you know, my dad, I'll say it like he said it. He's like, don't drive drunk and don't knock anybody up. That was his 2 rules.
Wow.
And anything else I wanted to do, I could just do whatever. And my parents just were cool with it. So.
Can I pause you?
Go ahead. I got to get water. My throat is still jacked. I apologize.
Oh my God. It's still.
Here, right here.
Oh no, I got a joke. That's for you. That's for you. I got mine. I've never had this happen before, dude.
Don't die on.
I was chopped that sec. People won't even know this. It's missing. I was chopped that arm out. And then they get taught or something will help.
Some just go down the wrong pipe.
Yeah, it's just like tickling and itching. All day. I haven't been coughing or nothing or yep. Right when I swallowed, I just kind of got aggressive with it. All right. Back. This should do it right here.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to continue off where you said, and don't knock anybody up.
Yeah, so growing up like that, I just had to figure it out. And I think that nobody really talked to me about the why behind anything that I did. It was just do the right thing. Get good grades, you know, don't bring shame on the family, like be a good kid. So I did all the things you're supposed to do, but then I found myself in my 20s and just generally discontent with life. And I think it was so, I went away to college and partied and did all these things my first year of college. But I think that's when I really started searching for God, even though I had started going to a Bible study in high school.
Yeah.
Actually, the church I go to now, Calvary La Habra, started out as a surf shop Bible study. And I went there through high school. I worked at the surf shop. So I had a lot of friends that were Christians, but I just saw it like a social club. It's like something you did and you go there and hang out with your friends. And then like the Bible study, all the good looking girls went to the Bible study because they wanted to hang out with the surfers. So it was like the social thing. And then when I went away to college and I realized, well, I was hanging out with this girl and we were at her house. This is like a weird story, and then her roommates were all doing acid or something.
Oh my goodness.
And I remember they were tripping out, like throwing this thing out the window and watching it fall. And I remember looking at all those people, and I remember thinking, if I died tomorrow, none of those people would care about me. And then it was like a really lonely feeling knowing that you're hanging out with these people, but nobody actually cares about you. And that experience sort of started this journey of like, what is truth? What is God? And then that led me to Christianity, which is based on grace, which is really the only religion that I've found that's not based on doing something, like you have to do all these things, which I thought was really interesting. You know, the whole doctrine of grace, like it's the grace of God, it's the gospel, the good news.
Yeah.
Christ died for your sins. I don't have to go do all these things. I think that's what kind of led me to Christianity in the first place. But even then, when I technically became a Christian, I was still very based on works. So like in our home, it wasn't like, Ron, we love you because you're made in the image of God. It's like, no, we love you because you're getting all A's. We love you because you're like producing, right?
You're our retirement plan.
So when you are producing, it's like your whole life is producing. You have to go make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think I took that into my faith where I felt like I had to do all these things. So I was kind of missing the boat. So I think when I first got saved, I was just trying not to do bad things. And I had to change all my friends. Like I hung out with all these Hawaiian guys I went to USC college, and all they did was smoke weed. And one day I went over there after the next year, and I'm like, was this my life before? All they did was sit around. They sat around and smoked weed, and then they talked about growing weed, and they like everything was involving weed. And it was like when, this was 1989.
Oh, this was before weed was
Yeah.
super potent like now.
Yeah. So, but that's what they did. And I'm like, I can't do this. Like they're just sitting around talking about weed and smoking weed all day. So I had to like refigure it out in college.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to law school, and it was just trying to figure it out. I did very well in high school and college. And then I had this epiphany in law school that I'm not a super genius. I'm just okay, which was very, very hard for me, which is another interesting thing that I've taken into jiu-jitsu. I think to be honest with yourself and to recognize this is my potential. Like most people don't try, they don't give it their all, because it's very sobering when you're like, I'm not as good as I thought I was. I'm just at this level. You see it in jiu-jitsu all the time.
Yeah.
Like you think you're great, and then some 15-year-old kid comes in from Brazil and kills you like it's nothing, and you're like, yeah, I'm not that great.
Yeah.
Like he's great. I'm not that great. But I think that to be intellectually honest with yourself and to see your who you really are, that's the first time it happened to me in law school, where I saw these people just going to Mexico on the weekends and like cruising, getting top of the class and on law review. And I'm in the library working and making outlines of my outline and I'm just mediocre. So then I graduate from law school, and in the meantime, I sort of had, like, I was dating this gal, and I was a believer, and I was the president of the Christian Legal Society at my law school, And I just had this crisis, I guess is the best way to call it. And I just walked away from the Lord. I met this girl in law school, and after the other one, we broke up, and I just felt sorry for myself, and I'm like, shine it. And I just like walked away from God, stopped calling back all my friends. But that was very good for me because it's the first time I really failed outright as a Christian. And I think when you don't receive the grace of God, you have a very hard time giving it. Like you see this a lot with church kids that grew up in the church and they were good kids. They never did anything wrong. But then they start becoming very legalistic. And I think I realized I was very legalistic because I never needed the grace of God because I always followed the rules.
Yeah.
When you fall on your face and it's apparent to you and everybody else that you're a quote unquote sinner, and you have to rely on God's grace because it's now you're clearly not worthy and everybody knows it, you know.
Yeah.
Then that's the first time where I'm like, oh, the grace of God. Which is funny, as a Christian for all those years, not really understanding the grace of God, but now you're relying on the grace of God because you're not this good person. It was really another one of those aha moments where I'm like, okay, I guess I have to rely on God's grace because I'm not pulling it off. And then when I got out of that relationship and then I graduated from law school, I'm like, I just need to not date whoever. And I pretty much didn't date anybody for a couple of years. And then the next gal I met was my wife. And then I was friends with her, and then we dated, and then I realized I had major commitment issues, and then I got over that and got married. But I'm a late bloomer, you know. I really am a late bloomer. In terms of, it takes me a while to get. Now I look as like fundamental concepts in my life, like the grace of God, like not being selfish, not being so afraid of what everybody thinks about you.
Yeah, nobody. It takes a long time to figure out. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
I mean, your family cares about that. You know what I'm saying? But it's not like TMZ's tracking you down and wondering what's going on.
But I'll say it like this, okay? The Bible talks about pride,
Mm-hmm.
but I think anything like self-pity is the flip side of pride. Being overly concerned with yourself, your image, what everybody thinks about you, what everybody says about you, just this over emphasis on yourself is pride.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sometimes it plays out like, I'm the man, I'm the greatest. That's like what you typically see as pride, but it could also be like, oh, I suck. Nobody loves me. Nobody understands me. Or why is my life like this, but everybody else gets like this better life? It's all pride,
Yeah.
you know? And when I realized that just thinking about myself too much was pride. So I wasted a lot of years just, I mean, everything happens for a reason, right? For a reason. But when I realized that I'm not that important, like it's not about me. It's not how I feel. I always talk to the kids on the mat and I'm like, you know what? If you're going to cry, then fight while you cry. Multitask. Like, it's not about you. Or I'll say this to kids, they'll stop training and they'll just lay there. And I'll be like, Johnny, are you selfish? They look at me like, what? I'm like, are you selfish? Do you care about anybody in life but yourself? Because you're going to Freddie here. Freddie needs a good training partner. There's a minute and a half left and you're laying on the ground feeling sorry for yourself. This is not about you. This is about being a good training partner for Freddie. So get up and suck it up and be a good training partner because it's not about you. You know? And it's like I should have given myself that advice throughout the 90s because I thought everything was about me. When then I got married and then I thought everything was about me. And then I realized like it's not. Right?
Yeah.
But it took me a while. So just graduating from law school, passing the bar, starting to practice. Really, my 20s were just summed up with trying to be who I thought everybody else needed me to be. And then getting engaged and trying to figure all that out. The first real significant thing that happened to me was my mom getting cancer. And I remember when she had breast cancer And then she did all the treatments for that. And then a couple years later, she had lung cancer. And then the lung cancer spread to her brain. And then I remember her coming back, and they basically said she had 6 months to live. And that was when I'm like, oh man, this is real, right? I was totally self-absorbed, living my own life, didn't even help my dad or anything. I was just typical 20-something, just self-absorbed, right? Trying to figure it out. And when they told me that my mom only had 6 months to live, I'm like, man, I need to talk to my mom about my faith. Because in our household, we didn't sit around and tell each other we loved each other. We weren't like a huggy family. It was very Asian, like we didn't talk about our feelings. And so for me to sit down and talk to my mom about anything substantive was a huge deal. And I prayed about it, and I wrote all these notes, and I went and I shared, about the good news, and went down the Romans road and all this stuff. And she said, thanks. That was her response. Thank you. And I'm like, man, that was not what I expected it to be, right? But then 3 months later, with my buddy who's my pastor and this other guy named Sumo, she accepts the Lord. And then she dies a couple months later. But that was my first moment where I'm like, okay, faith is real. Like my mom's going to die. And if I really believe this, is this just this country club that I go hang out with my friends on Sunday, go to a midweek Bible study, and then go to Denny's afterwards? Is this a social club, or is God actually real? Does he have the power to determine where my mom is going to go for eternity? And it's the first time she died in 98. So I would have been 29. It's the first time I had to deal with it. Like the reality of it all. So, and again, I turned to, I think, self-pity and grief is you're mourning your own loss, right? So I was going through all that, didn't really know how to deal with it. And I just kind of got through that. I got married in 2000, and I didn't really have a great marriage in the beginning because I was just too self-absorbed. I thought that she was here to serve me, like everything was about me. And it took me, I would say, into my 40s to recognize like it's not about me. And then I have 4 kids, Diego, who's now 20, Santi, 17, Mila, who's 11, Eddie, who's 8. And it was, so I'll fast forward.
Wait, before you fast forward, I have a question.
Yeah.
When you say self-absorbed, can you explain that a little bit more? Do you mean what did you mean by that? Do you mean like kind of like a narcissist, where it's just you put yourself above other people, or you just can't connect to other people?
I wouldn't say to the level of narcissism, but I viewed everything in terms of how I felt or how things made me feel.
Got it.
So whereas now I look at, it's God's grace that I'm still alive. It's God's grace that I'm still healthy or semi-healthy. It's God's grace that my wife still loves me. It's God's grace that my kids respect me. And so it's more of like, what's my reasonable service to God? Not how I feel about something. So I can get up and I can do something that's not fun, or that's mundane, or that's even difficult. But I have joy and I have peace and I have a deep sense of purpose because I realize this is my reasonable service to God out of thankfulness and gratitude for what he's done for me. So it's not, my first reaction is not, how do I feel about it? My first reaction is, I'll gladly do this if this is the right thing, because this is my reasonable service to God for what he's done for me. I think Christian service, our life, is out of response to, out of gratitude for what God has done for us. And if you look at everything like that, then how you feel about it is sort of immaterial. And I think that it's like jiu-jitsu. If you practice something long enough, it's not human nature, but becomes your nature because you practice it long enough. That's why jiu-jitsu works in a fight. Because if you roll with somebody who's not trained, they're going to do what comes naturally to them, which is going to be disastrous for them. But because you've trained things that are counter to people's regular human nature, you're manipulating that to your advantage in a fight. I think as a Christian, as you surrender to the Lord, you're going to do things that are not natural to you. Monogamy is not natural to men. Kindness is not natural. Being others focused is not natural. Being humble is not natural. But if we're obedient to the word of God, these become, we practice these things. That's the beauty of the metaphors between like the mat and life, or the mat and our walk with the Lord. It's like we practice unnatural things, but doing them over and over again, understanding why we do them, it now becomes natural. To be kind, to be others focused, to love unconditionally. It's not natural.
Yeah.
Lord of the Flies is natural, right?
I use that reference a lot when I talk to people. Yeah, Lord of the Flies is the ultimate expression of living without God. You know, just
I think one of the hardest things in a jiu-jitsu school is creating a culture where everybody's going super hard and, you got your best buddy and you're trying to kill this guy every day. But it doesn't go the way of putting 30 guys in a room together and just letting them do what comes naturally.
yes.
You have to create this loving, caring, selfless, humble culture, while at the same time you're creating these killers that can hurt people on purpose.
Yes, you can. I've been like the gym I go to, and I could even sense this when I went to East LA, is that people will go, they're going for it, trying to work up their skills, but there's that level of, I don't want to hurt you because you're my friend.
Yeah.
You could sense that when you go to certain gyms, because other ones, you could really tell because their student turnover rate due to injury is very high. And that's a sign of, okay, there's something off in there.
Yeah.
You know?
Because it's like students will follow leaders. And if the leaders don't have that moral compass or don't have those values, then the students will go that direction.
Yeah.
Or in a vacuum, when there's no leadership, they'll just do what they do. This is one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu culture is there's sort of enforcers on the mat, enforcers in the school. If somebody's smashing the girls or the old guy, there's going to be somebody that's like, don't do that. And then if you keep doing that, then they will get consequences, and I like that aspect of it. Is there's people that are in the school that are not the leader that are modeling that, so it's enforced on the rest of the community. It keeps everything honest.
Yeah.
So it's not just so now, like I use this example with my partner Jerry at Ethos, which is the first school we opened in 2016. I said, I'm a Christian, but this is not a Christian jiu-jitsu school. It's a jiu-jitsu school. I said, but when you go into AT&T, it's not a Christian cell phone store. It's just a professional cell phone store. So from the music we play or don't play, from our language, from our behavior, it's professional. And I think that when you put that expectation on everybody, you're going to get a certain environment. But when you and again, people can do it. It's their gym. They can do what they want to do. But like, for example, you're playing like the most gnarly gangster music and you're smoking weed in the parking lot with everybody before you roll. And then you allow, guys to talk about whatever and girls to talk about whatever or dress like whatever. And then you get what you get. And you're like, wow, that's surprising. I'm like, no, that's not surprising. Like you're allowing things to happen that shouldn't happen. And then when it manifests out in a physical way, but you're allowing that type of culture to grow.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're like, no, that's not how it is here, then people will respect that and they'll follow the lead. Anyways, I don't know how we got segmented
Yeah, no. We're just talking. But yeah, no, I agree with that. It's there's a big influence from the leadership down, and having owned a school for quite a few years, a long time ago,
Hmm.
I could sense that, and I could tell, like, even I'm kind of different. I wear my emotions on my sleeve sometimes, and well, not on my sleeve. Like, I don't walk around with a chip on my shoulder, but like I was going through a lot of personal things health wise when I was running my gym. So when I'm showing up, I don't have that same positive energy like, hey, everybody. I'm just showing up and teaching. And I could tell the energy in the room isn't good either. So there's definitely an influence. But going back to what you're saying, into your 40s, you realize that it's not about you. How that hit you? And was that had to be a blow to the ego also, right? Like, when you have a big epiphany, like I've been behaving this way for a long time, you almost want to punch yourself in the face or kick yourself in the butt, or whatever the saying is.
So I was born in 1969. I started jiu-jitsu at 39 years old. And so the 2009 thereabouts. And when I started now, and that's super old for jiu-jitsu to start.
I don't know. I've seen all ages, man. But
But back in the day, back in that time too, it was kind of different. It wasn't like kindler, gentler jiu-jitsu. It was more old school.
yeah.
So it was like less, oh, let me show you how to pass the guard. It was more like, just get submitted for 6 months and you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Oh, you left your arm out. Don't leave put both arms out or in, or you'll get triangled. Oh, don't post or you're going to get straight arm barred. It's like, oh, okay, I figured that out like 3 months in after somebody almost broke my arm 10 times, right?
Yeah.
There was these three brothers, and they would. Have you ever seen that old movie Airplane, where they're lighting up to beat the guy up?
No, it was a woman. My
was a
sister and I joke. She goes, "I got to get out of here. She's losing it, right?" Yeah, I guess she was off the plate.
Yeah, and it was like the three brothers would wait. There were 12 and 14 and 15. Okay, I'm a 39-year-old fat dude. Okay, I was like 40 pounds heavier, and I would just go to class, and they would just be waiting for me, and they would all just take turns killing me. And kids are ruthless, right? Like no mercy. So they would just kill me every single day, and I'm like, what in the world's going on here? But when I started doing jiu-jitsu, it was the first time. So the first epiphany right in law school, when I realized I'm not the greatest, and then my mom dying and kind of having to figure out, is heaven actually real? Getting married, not being terribly good at that. Then I start jiu-jitsu, and I'm definitely not good at that. It was all these things where I'm just like, man, I'm just not. I'm not the guy that I thought I was here. And looking back on it, it's like, where do you learn the most about yourself? Through failure, right? So now I'm in jiu-jitsu and I'm just failing every day. But what I loved about jiu-jitsu was I could never calm my mind down. Like my wife and I would travel a lot. Like I would surf, I would snowboard and ski. Like I would do all these quote unquote extreme things because I couldn't turn my mind off. And it's, my mind's my best friend, it's my worst enemy. And I just had a really hard time like de-stressing, decompressing, like leaving anything alone. And I think that's what made me good at business is like failure is not an option. Like, oh, the reason why it's not working out is you just need to work more.
Yeah.
You just need to work harder. You need to work smarter. And I built a shopping center so I was practicing law, then I got into real estate development, and I spent from like the mid-late 90s to 2003, 2004 building the shopping center in East LA. And it almost killed me. Like I almost had several nervous breakdowns because, I'm trying to control everything. It's just not, again, it's not going well. But I'm like, this, like, failure is not an option. Like, I am going to succeed. And when it just wasn't going my way, I just didn't know what to do with myself. But by the grace of God, I built the thing, and it's, but what I realized somewhere through that process was, if it succeeds, it's not because I'm brilliant. So I better not take all the credit, because it's like the goodness of God that I was able to pull this off.
Mhm.
It's not me, because there were so many things going wrong, so many problems. I was in way over my head. I was like faking it till I make it. And then when I actually built it, I got taken advantage of by all these consultants. My contractors were totally crooked and defrauded me. I was in a lawsuit with them. Like,
Just typical construction stuff.
yeah,
That's sounds about right.
yeah. And I came through it all. I won the lawsuit because they were defrauding me. So my project manager was bipolar, and she goes through this manic episode, like during the grand opening, where you cut the ribbon with the big scissors and everything, and she pulls up. She calls me. She's on medical leave. I don't know what's going on, and I got all the who's who of East LA there. I don't know if you remember. I'll name, like, Gloria Molina. She was a supervisor of the first district. Lee Baca, the sheriff.
Oh yeah, I remember Lee
Like-
Walker.
Like, all these guys were there. Every single person I knew. And I'm there at the ceremony cutting the ribbon. And she calls me, and she's like, "You need to meet me now." So I get in her car. We're driving around the block. And she's totally manic. And she's like, "They're ripping you off. They're fixing the prices with the subs. Like, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, she's like, you're good people. I can't watch them do this to you." And then she drops me back off and she leaves. So I'm like, what in the world just happened here? So I had to just go back in there, cut the ribbon. And then it starts this thing of, like, I'm not going to pay you the last 10%. And, so they sued me for breach of contract. I countersued them for fraud. I spent my whole year basically doing all the, I had a lawyer, but I was doing all the legwork, gathering all the documents.
Yeah, the research.
Yeah, and we won. They settled with me because they knew that. I looked them all in the eye and I said, "I'm going to take away your contractor license because you ripped off me and my family, and that's not cool."
Mhm.
And then I guess they understood that I was going to take it wherever it needed to go, and we settled. But it's all these things that, it's a long answer, but kind of getting to the end of myself. And starting doing jiu-jitsu was a really big part of that process, because, again, it showed me everything I was not. Like, when I started doing jiu-jitsu, I just fell in love with it. I started training every day, competing a lot. Sometimes I go twice a day.
I miss twice a days. My body can't do it. We talked
Yeah.
about that the other day.
I used to have this big office with a shower and a couch, and I would go train in the morning, and then I would go take a shower, and then I'd lay on the couch and I'd sleep for like 3 hours
Okay, that sounds about right.
because I was so tired, because I'm just like fighting for my life against those 3 kids, which begs the question, like, why weren't they in school? Like, what the heck's going on here, right? Who does that? They were either homeschooled or they just didn't go to school, because they were all in the morning class. Which, now that I think about it, I'm like, why weren't they in school?
Yeah, their parents they might be in homeschool kids. And,
No, they weren't the homeschool type. I just think they.
Oh, they just weren't going to school. All right.
So, yeah. So it was all this combination of stuff that helped me sort of recognize all my shortcomings. But I'll tell you this story. It was 2009. So the same year, or before I started jiu-jitsu, my father, who was like a hard man, he was a great guy. His name was Tomo. Salt of the earth guy, but just drank Crown Royal, was in a bowling league, fished, would fight,
Man.
would fight people. Like, I remember me and my brother being in our Mustang, and somebody would say something to him and be like, "Pull over," and he'd pull over on the side of the road and fight him with me and my brother sitting in the car. like stuff like that, you know? Like we were at Shat's Bakery in Bishop on the way home from going fishing, and these guys were in line, and the lady in front's like, hey, the line's back there, and these two guys are like, hey, don't worry about it. And my dad's like, no, you need to go to the back of the line. And then my dad was like, if you don't go to the back of the line, I'm going to do blah, 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 blah. And I just remember him looking at those guys, and they moved because like the look on his face was like, let's go. It was like me and him in the line, but that was like my life, right? And it's funny because after I became a Christian, people are like, oh yeah, Ron, like one time we were going to go to this golf tournament, and one of the guys was like, yeah, Ron, we're going to go to the golf tournament, but it's not like a Christian environment. And I'm like, I think I'm okay, man. Like we're okay.
Yeah.
Because he thought like I lived in some monastery or something,
Yeah.
reading the Bible growing up,
Yeah.
But so my dad was this self-made guy, and he's like, I don't believe in God. God never gave me nothing. I worked for everything. Don't pray for me. And he was diabetic. His kidneys went bad. He was on dialysis, had a triple bypass. Still just like tough guy, And one day, this is the providence of God. So one day we had drama at our church. And so I took off time from doing what I was doing, and I was basically counseling people, right? And my dad was at home. I would never go to his house during the day because I was working. And then, so I'm at his house at lunch, and he falls down in the bathroom. And so I called 911, and it was kind of common, like his blood pressure would drop because of the dialysis. And they'd take him to the emergency room. They give him an IV. They'd put fluid back in him. His blood pressure would come up, and they'd send him home. So I go there. So I call 911. They come get him. So then I'm in the parking lot making phone calls, and his girlfriend's like, you need to come in here. So I go in there, and he flatlines right there in the emergency room. Like, and they run in, and they're shocking him, and they're doing chest compressions, and they bring him back to life, and they're like, hey, he's going to live for like an hour. Like, he's done. Less than 10% heart capacity, he's just done. And so that was 1 p.m. And then I just wait there all day. My brother comes. We sign the papers, don't resuscitate. And we're basically just waiting for him to die. And he's like, God never gave me nothing. You go 6 feet under when you die. Like, just totally not like.
He was alert afterwards?
No. So he's unconscious, okay?
Uh-huh.
And we're waiting for him to die. So we wait there all afternoon, wait there all night. And then I fall asleep in the waiting. My brother went home. I fall asleep in the waiting room. And in the morning, I wake up. And I thought that he already died. And I'm like, why didn't somebody come and get me? Because I told the staff, I need you to come get me before he dies. And when he was in the emergency room, I'm whispering in his ear, like, you cannot go out like this. Like, you can't, you're a fighter. You can't die like this, right? And so I wake up in the morning, and I go in his room, and the guy's sitting there awake. He's got tubes everywhere. And I'm like, I asked the doctor, what's going on? He's like, I don't know.
He's unbreakable.
He's like, it's a miracle. I mean, this dude wasn't even a Christian. He was like this Persian guy. He says, it's a minor miracle. That's what he said. He goes, I don't tell people that their loved one's going to die unless they're going to die. He's like, I don't know why he's still alive. So I go in there, I'm like, hey, Dad, it's me. And he's like, yeah. Like, or he's shaking his head because he got tubes everywhere, right? And I'm like, you understand what I'm saying? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you died yesterday and they brought you back to life. I'm like, this is the grace of God. I'm like, you need to accept the Lord because you should have been dead yesterday. He's like this. So the guy accepts the Lord on a Thursday. So he dies on Wednesday, accepts Jesus into his heart on Thursday, and then he dies Friday. So after that happened, I was pretty much done. Because, like, you know, in life, as men, we compartmentalize things. Like, oh, I have terminal cancer. I'm going to have faith. Oh, I need another $1,000 this month. I got no faith. I'm going to go grind it out because I need to go make it happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, I have terminal cancer. I'll have faith. Oh, my wife's being unreasonable. No, I better go put her in her place because I'm running this house and I need to let her know that I'm the boss. So we compartmentalize when to have faith and when not to have faith. When that thing happened with my dad, I'm like, God can do anything. Because I watched like a super hard, defiant man, like by the grace of God, give his life to God under all these crazy circumstances that don't make any sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like super clear, like it was the hand of God. And I'm not a guy that talks about stuff like that. I'm not like, oh, it's the hand of God. Like, oh, God told me to wear, the red socks today. I'm not like that kind of guy.
Yeah.
But like I saw this change in him that's you can't describe it. It just happened. And so that when that happened and then I started doing jiu-jitsu later on, it just made me realize like I am not in control of my life. And that just kind of set me on this whole other path of I don't have to control everything and I don't have to be afraid of anything, of everything. And it's kind of been this gradual thing ever since 2009 where, it gets better. So in 2010, I get diagnosed. In 1 year, I had pneumonia and Bell's palsy and testicular cancer in 1 year. Because I'm grinding, right? I'm still grinding, trying to make $1 million or trying to do whatever I was doing. And I realized, like, if I die tomorrow, more money doesn't even matter. So then I stopped. I basically gave notice to this law firm that I was working for. And I stopped trying to make more money. And that was significant because by that time I was self-aware enough to realize like I'm kind of an all-in kind of guy. That's what I appreciate about you. I think you're kind of the same way. Like if you're going to do something, you're going to go do it.
Yeah. Sometimes that could be bad. I do it all the way almost to destruction.
Well, I know. Me too. So what I realized is if I'm actually going to get off this bandwagon, I need to get off the bandwagon. I need to like not pursue money. And so I basically made a bucket list of everything that I thought was significant that I needed to get done if I was to die tomorrow. And I quit my job and I started doing these things. And that was pretty cool. Like it led me into a lot of ministry stuff and gave me my life a little more balance. But in 2016 was kind of like the epiphany I had with God. And again, I don't speak in these terms, but I realized like I have to just, the words I used were, I have to commune with God. I have to spend time with God and really understand who he is, his nature, and be the best husband I can be the best father I can be, and not just play the game and try to be everything to everybody. I mean, the fear of man that I talk about a lot, it's like I really cared too much what everybody thought about me. And it made me popular and it made me do a good job in things like ministry or other endeavors because I tried really hard for people to like me and all this other stuff, but I didn't have a whole lot of peace. I mean, I realized like, okay, I need to actually spend time with God and understand who he is and I need to be a really good husband to my wife and a really good father to my kids, it really just was a game changer for me. Because I basically like got off, I jumped off this hamster wheel of life.
Yeah.
And I, from 2016 through the pandemic, I pretty much stayed there. I taught jiu-jitsu. I managed my real estate. My marriage completely changed, which I think is the most amazing thing ever. For two people to fundamentally relate to each other differently based on like the love and the forgiveness of God. It's totally amazing. I mean, if you see my wife and I now and who we were 5 years in our marriage, it's like a completely different thing. Because I had to fear God more than I feared her. And I think when I made that change and she understood that this is like, okay, this is real. This is not an act. This is not manipulation for Ron to get something. This is like an actual conviction from God, and he's just trying to like be obedient to that. It was a game changer. I remember coming home one day and I'm like, I need to surrender to God and you need to submit to me. Okay, for me to say that to my wife, I either had to be completely insane, like that's, and I'm not saying it like, hey, submit woman, like cook me some beans. It's not like that. It was like, no, for this to work as God intended, I need to surrender to the Lord on a daily basis and you need to submit to me. Submission doesn't mean agreement. Submissions means submission. Like I submit to the Lord. It's not like that I have to agree with God for me to submit to the Lord. I'm submitting to the Lord. And for our marriage to work like it should, when he has it, now I'm not lording it over her, but when she understood that and she's like, okay, it was a total game changer in our marriage. And I don't abuse that in any way, shape, or form because I don't take credit for that. I think it's like, again, it's the grace of God,
Yeah.
But this just set me on this path. And it's funny, 2016, it's when we opened up Ethos as well.
Yeah.
And I didn't do Ethos. Again, it's not Christian jiu-jitsu. I think things that are Christian, it's for like, this is not Christian water. It's water,
Yeah.
It's not Christian coffee. Actually, I get a lot of heat from my conservative friends for drinking Starbucks. Like I'm
Oh, really?
supporting the devil, but they do make a good latte, so whatever. But yeah, in 2016 when I opened my school, it was just a really significant year.
Yeah.
It's probably when I found peace. So I would have been 46, turning 47.
Mm-hmm.
How sad is that, right?
No.
I'm like figuring it out at 47 years old and through much failure. But that was kind of like the start of my modern life, 2016.
I don't think that's old at all or sad because I think a lot of people, I don't have any stats on this, but they go to the grave without figuring it out.
True.
So, like with me, let's just say I'm in my late 40s. I'm still figuring it out. Like, it's this whole process of deprogramming what was ingrained and then also habits. Like how you and I talked about, you mentioned earlier being 100% in. The problem with me being 100% in is that I go 100% in without God. And that's a habit out of life. And asking God to bless something that he didn't bless, And I'm like, well, maybe God wants me to do my part and he'll step in. Like I rationalized to go harder and I'm just hard-headed, And I thought about this earlier when you were explaining how with the death of your mom, the passing of your mother, is that like, I don't know if this is common with everyone, but I find it that with me, and maybe I can't speak for you, but with me, events like that or something significant are the only things that get my attention. If not, if it's minor, do you like some people go, you know what? I was praying, I got a warm feeling, and I'm not going to do that. I don't respond well to that. It's like God has to hit me over the head with a crisis or something significant to shake me up, you know. And I've looked into the Bible, and I think that there's quite a bit of evidence that shows if you see the people that God uses, like in very significant ways for hard tasks, those guys had to basically spiritually get punched in the face. From the Apostle Paul, remember he was blind. David, I mean, he wrote Psalms. That's someone writing poetry or songs to. A lot of it's turmoil.
It's a book of war. Psalms is a book of war.
Yeah, but you hear how much he's like, God, hiding into your wings. Like he's
Yeah, because everyone's trying to kill him.
yeah, everyone's trying to kill him. Yeah, he's stressed. I couldn't imagine his blood pressure when he was writing that, right? But I think that there's certain, you know, everyone has different personalities, and God uses every type of personality. And some of us have these personalities where God knows we're like a pit bull and we'll lock on. So he has to keep a different kind of leash on us because we'll lock on to the wrong thing. So that was the story of my life.
So I'll give you an example, okay? Christians, they spend so much time on salvation, which is important, like the good news, the gospel. But a lot of the Bible is talking about wisdom versus foolishness, about making good choices versus making bad choices. And you know, this word has been abused or taken out of context, but like the fear of the Lord, this healthy reverence for God.
Yes.
I think that wisdom is recognizing that you can learn things the easy way or the hard way.
Yeah.
And wisdom is like, oh, I want to learn things the easy way. I don't want to learn things the hard way. And I think everybody has those moments where you learn things the hard way. But then, like, I have a friend, okay? He was on his third marriage. He was on his second marriage at the time.
Hey, third's the charm, man.
And
Third comes the charm.
then his wife at the time, she gets this new hairstyle. And we're at this restaurant, and she sits down and she's like, what do you think of my hair? And he looks at her and he's like, I don't like it. And then he keeps eating. And I'm like, yeah, he's done. Like he's, you know.
He hasn't learned.
No. And he got divorced again, you know, but it's like, how many times do I have to learn the same lesson before I'm like, I don't want to learn that same lesson again? And I think that now, and hopefully I don't eat my words, but it's like, I really don't want to learn another lesson the hard way. So I think wisdom, the fear of the Lord, is like, I'm going to listen to your still small voice. I'm going to listen to the people in my life that are wise, that are going to give me good counsel. I'm not going to be too proud and think, oh, you know, that Bible study is for somebody else when it's really for me. Like, I'm going to listen because I don't want to learn things the hard way.
See, that's where I'm at now.
Yeah.
I'm there now, but I wasn't before. I didn't learn.
So you're well on your way.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say you're at the beginning of the journey. I think you're well on your way because I think that's a big aha moment. It's the fear of the Lord. Like, I don't want to go through whatever I went through a couple years ago. I don't want to go through that again. So I'm gonna listen for God's voice and not just do whatever. Because you do whatever, it's like the mat. You get on the mat and you do whatever, you're gonna get whatever, and whatever's not good.
What's that say? Play dumb games.
Yeah, when play dumb games, win stupid play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 1,000,000%. I agree with you 1,000,000%. There's nothing more I could add on to it except going on about how hard-headed I was. And it's weird because it doesn't feel like I'm going, well, yeah, let me take that back. Certain things did feel like I was going against God. But a lot of it, I feel like, well, it's not that bad, or let me just do it this way, or do it my way. And God's like, no, it doesn't work that way. But when I did reach a point where I came to the realization that I completely need to rely on God, you know, and respect. Like, I use the word, because, you know, the translations are kind of wonky, different depending which version. When I read fear of the Lord, I read it as respect, a deep, deep respect, like how you respect a parent. You're like, no matter what, you would never for me, the world's changed. I would never cuss at my mother, no matter what. She could do whatever to me. I would never hit my mother. She could beat me, and I would never hit her. She's never beat me, but I would never hit her. So I look at it as that way, just a complete respect for God beyond myself. And when you do that, it's kind of a growing process. And another epiphany that came from just studying is that people look at it as salvation. As you mentioned, they focus on salvation. I look at there's more to it than salvation. Salvation is the beginning of, I think Jesus's plan is, I look at the word restoration. God restores us to where we're supposed to be. The salvation, I believe, is the initiation of it. Like I've given my life to Christ.
Yeah.
That's the beginning of the restoring process, restoring your marriage, restoring your health. He's giving you back what you deserve or what you're entitled to or what is yours. Not what you, I don't know if I'm using the right words, but that's how I see it. And, it's very eye-opening. It's very disheartening because I was like, just like you, I thought, man, why did it take me so long? And I've come to realize, like, I date around. I'm on the scene and I date like on the Christian dating apps or whatever, trying to find my godly woman. And I've come to realize that even women older than me, younger than me, I'll just say they're people, right? They're people. They're on the same journey. They could be 55 years old and still stuck on behavior patterns they did in high school, And so I've come to realize, like, well, thank God this happened. These are all blessings. And I think, I can't remember where it's at. I know Paul, the Apostle Paul, always talks about how he counts these trials as blessings. And they are, because they're opportunities to just, like, these deep, you have two ways to go. Those situations could have broke you, right? But losing loved ones, or you had a complete mental breakdown off of the strip mall.
Yeah.
Or there are these seeds of wisdom. They might not be watered at that moment, but they're going to. They see, I like how God ties it all together. I've even given up on the fact of trying to figure out God. Because a lot of Christians theologize like, man, well, you think God, if God this, or do you think, who would he vote for, Trump or Kamala? I don't even get into that. I'm like, dude, God is so beyond us. Our brain can't even fathom. We're talking about a godly mind, a God's mind.
So I heard this story. So there's a guy, he was a law professor at Bolt. And somebody brought me to this faith-based legal thing, but he was speaking, but it was very interesting. He said, imagine if we lived in a two-dimensional world, okay, on one plane. I said, but imagine if there was a three-dimensional God. So somebody could disappear into the floor and pop back here. So the two-dimensional mind would be like, that's amazing. Or he would just disappear into the sky and then drop back here. The three-dimensional mind understands he's under the table and pulling up or going back and then down. But in our two-dimensional minds, we can't fathom a third dimension.
Yes.
He says, now imagine if God has 20 dimensions, but human beings only live in a three-dimensional world, understanding time and space in the way they understand time and space. He says, that's what we're trying to do by fitting God into our box. We can't understand how multidimensional or how big, how all-encompassing God could be, because we're limited by our finite minds.
Yes.
And I thought that was so interesting, but that's what we do. That's what I spent a majority of my life doing, is trying to fit God into my mindset. And which leads me to another point.
How can I make God raised in East LA, former surfer? Like,
No, but
it's
it's
just,
like, of course, I'm on God's side, so God should think like me. I mean, I used to do divorce law, and when everything's going bad, everybody picks Jesus. Like, I'm getting divorced, but Jesus is on my side. And I'm like, well, maybe he is now, but the 10 years of your marriage, based on the testimony of your children, I don't think Jesus was on your side. I think you were on your side, right? And so just understanding that it's not up to us to sort of have God fit in our box. This whole idea of surrender. I'll use this analogy. Well, I used to smoke cigarettes, but I stopped in 2019. Or I used to say the F word, but I'm getting a lot better. I only do it now when I drop something on my foot. Okay. That's behavior. What I realized is my biggest problem was I never surrendered to God how I think. This is the roles of husbands and wives in marriage. This is the extent of the grace I will give or the forgiveness I will give. After you pass this, there's no coming back because now you're on the idiot list. So I don't forgive you and I don't trust you ever again. And it's like, but if I'm holding on to that way of thinking and it's unbiblical, then it's not surrender to God. And where the victorious Christian life comes in is full surrender. Like if you look at Joshua, when they went in to take the promised land, he's like, you need to go in and do these things exactly like I told you to do when I tell you to do them, period. Whether they make any sense, whether it's not on your timing, like go march around the city 7 times and blow a trumpet and the walls will come down. It's like crazy stuff. It's crazy talk. It's not rational. It's not reasonable.
It doesn't make sense at all whatsoever. Like, if you drew a battle plan to service
So like,
the
look at your life. Does your life make sense?
No.
No. I mean, neither does my life. So it's like when you understand surrendering to God, what you do, what you say, where you go, but how you think. When you actually are like, I am not entitled to my opinion about how things should go, how everybody should treat me, the way everything should work. I'm not entitled to that opinion because I need to surrender everything to God. How can you be offended when you're like, you can't kill a dead man, you know? And I think that when you surrender how you think, it's very freeing because now you're not dogmatic about this or that or the other. In this election year, I have very strong opinions on a lot of things, but it's not really, it's not material to anything that I do. Yeah. If anybody wants my opinion, I'll give it to them, but I don't feel the need to go tell anybody anything about anything, you know, because it's like, I realize like I've spent a lot of years thinking a certain way and I thought I was right. And at the end of the day, I need to surrender that to God.
Yeah.
That's where the true victorious Christian life starts. Because if you take your directions from God and you're obedient to Him in the moment, He's going to do extraordinary things that don't even make any sense. Like if you look at my life right now at 55 years old, it's nothing like I thought it was going to be in my 20s, but it's way better.
Hopefully I can say that at that point. I'm working on it. God's working on it. But you know what? I just want to, what are your thoughts on this? You know, when, to get to that point of surrendering to God, you have to be willing to hold yourself accountable. You got to examine yourself and look inward. Like the Bible's they use a cliche, it's a mirror. And you look inwards. I don't think a lot of people could do that, even if they go to church. Because it's hard for me. It's hard for, I think, most people. But to reach that point, that's I think that's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. That's the rub, because everyone says, yeah, I surrender. They do during church service, right? Everyone's surrender, raising their hands. But to really get in there and, like not road rage or not cheat on your taxes or not, being ethical when no one's looking, I think that's the difficult part,
Well, I'll give you an example. As men, this is why religion is so easy for men. And I'm not knocking any particular religion, but like if you're a Mormon and you're like, do these things and don't do these things, and you will be successful in the church and in your business in that ecosystem. It's easy to do those things or, go on a mission. Don't do this, don't do that. Yeah. Like you follow directions. It's behavior based. But I think in Christianity, the easy thing, it's the grace of God. But the most difficult thing, almost the impossible thing without surrendering to God is it's not anything you're doing, it's surrender. you're a bondservant of Jesus Christ, right? Paul referred to himself as a bondservant of Jesus Christ. That's a person that's voluntarily giving up his freedoms to live in servitude for this benevolent master who's out of gratitude for him. And it's like, that's very difficult to do on an ongoing basis if you're trying to do it on your own power. So it's almost like, it's like this paradox of it's really easy and it's impossible at the same time. If you do it under the power, if you're relying on God's power to do it, like, right, through Christ we can do all things, right?
Yeah.
But if you're trying to do it on your own power, it's very, very hard. I mean, I see a lot of people get like my wife's Mexican, and just knowing a lot of folks that are Catholics, and I believe there's a lot of Catholics that have a real relationship with Jesus and are saved and all the other stuff. But I'm talking about a lot of folks that are like in bondage to religion. They spend their whole life trying to be better, trying to be good, trying to not do bad things, and you're just stuck in the cycle of trying to please God, and you're never really measuring up, and then it's the guilt and the shame, and it's this whole cycle. I don't think it's trying to be better, or be good. I think it's this process of like, you're so thankful to God for what he's done. You're basically giving up your way for a better way. You're surrendering to God.
Yeah.
And again, it starts off with, I'm surrendering my vices, I'm surrendering my behaviors, I'm surrendering my time. But the continuum is you're surrendering how you think.
Yeah.
And I think there's true freedom in that, because now you're not holding on to these ideas.
No, I feel you. I just think I feel you, and I completely agree. It's just being lost in the sauce where, you don't know how lost you are. You don't know how much in your own thoughts you are. For me, God has hit me upside the head with a 2x4 to reel me in. I have to be like, I've noticed a big all of my significant spiritual growth occurs through significant events in my life, whether the death of something or some type of traumatic event. And that's what kind of draws me in, and it gets me out of myself. And then I'm like, oh, but like in the last few years, I think I've come close to what you're speaking of completely trying to have God just, completely give myself to God, which is, it's tough, man. It's not for me right now. It's actually not even hard on most of it. Like, there's a freedom in it. I don't feel the need to give my opinion on stuff. Like you say, that's actually a freedom. For like, oh, let me argue, There's a freedom there, but at the same time, it's, I don't know. There's so many dynamics to it. It's so complex. Yeah. Like there's a friend of mine that I made, and I'll mention their name once we get off of here. I don't want to say it on here, but, never, I don't even want to say this, because if they're listening, then they're going to know never mind. But so the thing is this, I'll mention their name once we get off here. Like, as I got to know them, they began to share with me, like, this person was raised Christian, and their family would condemn them all the time for behavior. But they're very involved in church, but this person is like traumatized spiritually. It's like they're even scared to do things. To the point where it's almost paralyzing. Like, well, let me see if my family's okay with this, because they're believers, and they'll get on me about this. I was thinking, are they really though? If there's that much intimidation, it's like the faith has become weaponized, to keep the family in line and things like that. And that's the concern I have. I hope I don't go too far, and become like, it's just the balance in there, because no matter what you do, there's a spiritual warfare. And the enemy could get into your mind, and he's always trying to play it one way or the other. So if you're going towards God, let's get a little extra conservative. Make your wife wear something that goes to her knuckles and cover completely up. And you know what I'm saying? Like, there's always a little catch. There's traps everywhere. So I'm trying to be connected with God, and like, God, please let me just be able to distinguish between what is from you and what is from me, or what is from, dark entities or whatever.
But like the whole fear of man being overly concerned with what people think, this is the beauty of ministry. Okay. And I'm not talking about some big flowery Christian definition of ministry, but ministry is people. Like when you're around people, you're doing ministry. And your ministry is an outflow of who you are and what God has done in your life. So whether it's Christian ministry to lead others towards Christ, or just on a human level where you want to help people avoid the pitfalls that you've went through in life, or to avoid the trauma that you've had to endure, or to help this next generation so they don't repeat the same mistakes of our generation, right? Ministry is people. And then I think that if you just, like, you're not telling anybody what to do. You're just telling people, like, for example, on a Christian level, Christian ministry, you're telling people what God has done in your life. You're not forcing anybody to do anything. You're not trying to make them like you. You're not condemning them for not being like you. There's a real freedom in that, because I'll say it this way. You're spending all your energies on what you're for and not what you're against. And if somebody wants to go picket this place or picket that place, or stand on the sideline and tell everybody that they're going to hell, I'm not there to tell them to do that or not do that. It's not my cup of tea, but I think that it's very refreshing when you live your life on what you're for and not what you're against. Because, like, I don't tell anybody what to do. I'm not telling anybody what not to do. I'm not condemning anybody for doing anything. I mean, I think that what I realized through East LA Jiu Jitsu is everybody's looking for the same thing. Everybody's looking to have meaningful relationships, to have the respect of their spouse, to have the respect of their children, to have meaning and purpose in their life, to be a good friend, and to be trusted and to trust others. Like, everybody wants these basic things in life that have nothing to do with socioeconomic status or anything. It's just like a basic human desire, right?
Yeah.
And so I talk to everybody exactly like I'm talking to you, whether it was Mother Teresa or Billy Graham or Johnny Satanist or whatever,
Yeah. No, yeah,
because it's like, I'm not changing what I say so that they like me more. I'm talking to them because I want to be who God's called me to be to them, to help, to benefit them.
yes.
And I think that if your definition of ministry is people, whenever you're around people and you're just who you're supposed to be to them, it makes it very meaningful, but it also makes it very easy because you really don't have any agenda. Like, I think one of the things, and I always say things that could be seen as anti-church. I'm very, very pro-church, but it sounds critical of the church, but it's not. But it's like, when I talk to anybody, I don't have this agenda that they have to do these things to meet my approval, or they're wasting my time and I won't talk to them. And
See that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that right there. That's what I see as weaponizing it. Like it's used as a tool, which.
But look at my dad. My dad spent his whole entire life denying God. And at his funeral, I was talking to all his old buddies, and they were telling me all these crazy stories about him. But one of his friends, Claude, says, Ron, your dad, like 30 years ago, he asked me, "Hey, Claude, do you think Jesus is real?" And Claude says, "Yeah, Tomo, he's real." He's like, "Why you ask?" It's like, "Because my kid goes to church now. He's always hanging out with, going to church, and all of his buddies are Christians." He's like, "I was just wondering, is it real?" And Claude's like, "Yeah, Jesus is real." So my dad was asking his buddy questions when I was in my 20s. My dad would never, ever, ever have any conversation with me about God or anything. But God was working in his life.
Yeah.
You see,
Through you.
yeah, but
Through you.
but that's what I'm saying. It's like you never know. So whether or not, I mean, it's by the grace of God that I actually got to see my dad give me the satisfaction of like, okay, like, all right, I'm gonna like let God into my heart.
Yeah.
But it's God is working whether I got to see that or not. But it goes back to control. Even in a Christian sense, we want, like, I put in this work, I want to see the result.
Yeah.
I want it to be super clean. Like I talk to neighbor A, and neighbor A says, "Oh, now I gave my life to the Lord, and I can put that as a feather in my cap, and I can move on." But it's like, it would be great if that happens, but it's like that's not, like, if you treat people like a project, who likes to be treated like? Let's say you're the jacked up guy, okay?
Which I am.
Okay, but I mean, what if every time I talk to you, I'm like, this is Kenny, project number 37, and I have to make Kenny less jacked up. So every time I talk to you, I have this agenda of I have to go through these things and talk to you about them because I have to make you less jacked up. After a while, you're gonna be like, man, I don't really like hanging out with Ron. Every time we're talking, he's like trying to get to this thing, and maybe today I don't really feel like talking about that. Or like, dude, I get it, I'm messed up. Like, why does he have to keep reminding me about it? Right? You know?
Yeah. Or you don't hang out with him because he's messed up.
Yeah, it's like,
That's-
you know
that's
what?
worse.
I talked to him 5 times, and the last 5 times he didn't want to talk about it. Forget it. He's wasting my time. I'll go talk to somebody else.
Yeah, I got like a salesman. Like, you know what? This is a like you have the warm leads. I'm gonna go to the more warmer leads where I can close the deal. This guy right here, he's not biting.
So I think that if you just treat people the way you'd want to be treated, and you don't have this agenda, it's better for them. It's better for you.
Yeah. I have a question. So jumping into East LA Jiu Jitsu, how did that, like, first of all, I was there last week for the first time, and my friends, when I went back to my home gym, they're asking me about it, and I was like, man, this guy, he has this nonprofit, and I was like telling all this stuff, and quite a few of them, because some of the guys at my gym, they own gyms, but they're like, they're investors, and stuff like that, and they're like, how's he pulling off a nonprofit? It's hard for profit. And I was like, I don't know, dude. He goes, he must know something. I said, well, it's a ministry. So, I mean, God's involved, but,
It's the grace of God.
yeah, well, I was, some of them are believers. So I was just like, it's a ministry, like a God's involved. I said, but it's complete donations. And they're baffled because it's hard as a for-profit gym to function. It's very hard because, like we talked earlier, for your recording, it's so competitive. Like it's hard, and then people with money, who's gonna there's certain I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe there's certain demographics in our country that the majority of society just don't care about. There's like,
True.
yeah, there's no value to them, and so. But with that said,
Okay, can I tell you a funny story?
yeah,
So in East LA, I was on the resident advisory committee for the MTA. Okay.
wait, MTA, for people
MTA,
who
the
know.
Metropolitan Transportation Authority. They're the ones that run all the buses and the trains, the
Subway? Okay,
Right.
I heard of the subway. I've never been on the subway.
So the MTA brought this, it was called the Gold Line. Now it's called the E Line, I think. They brought it into East LA. And it was underground through downtown. And then magically, when it came into East LA, which happens to be the poor area of town, it's above grade, which is totally crappy, okay? And destroys the look of the neighborhood, destroys the streets. It's just ugly and not efficient. And their justification was their engineer said that engineering-wise, they couldn't go underground. So, ironically, the only 2 places where it's not underground is Long Beach, the poor part of Long Beach, okay? Like Anaheim Street, which is like a ghetto, right?
Yeah,
Long Beach and East LA.
yeah,
So the west side, which is by the beach, it's underground on the west side. But they sold it to us as the engineer said that it wasn't feasible, and then we bought it. I just think it's funny because you talk about there's population groups that nobody cares about, and you want to think the best of people. Like the Bible says, hope have hopes for all things, okay?
Yeah.
Which I truly believe you should hope for all things. But I think there's a caveat with the MTA because the MTA totally took advantage of East LA and gave us this subpar product and pushed it off as science. And I just think they didn't want to spend the money. It's
Well-
just East LA. Why want to spend the money on something underground?
Okay, well, I don't mean to burst your bubble on this, but my sister, she's one of the lead engineers at Caltrans, right?
Hmm.
And she used to work for different cities, but then she went to the state level in Caltrans, and she literally designs the concrete overpasses that you see with the retrofits and stuff, but she also works on freeways. And so she had to learn the history and the mapping and things like that. And so she told me this, which I'm going to tell you, and you can look it up online. It's going to bother you. But no, it's intentional. It's 100% intentional. Like if you look at the 5 freeway and the 405s, or even the 91s, how they split these areas. You got like on the other side, it's poor and the other side is rich. That's intentional. It's completely intentional. So these freeways were put in, like that guy Mulholland at Mulholland Drive. Just look him up. He had a lot to do with where the streets were put. Like a lot of those intersections in Los Angeles, I don't know all the names of them. Those are actually the wealthier areas of African American and Hispanic families, the minorities. And they just do them there, drove the value down. They don't care. Or do you ever see the building of Dodger Stadium?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Chavez Ravine.
yeah, they just ripped the families right out
Yeah.
and just took the land. So no, it's not a coincidence and it's not science. They said the same thing back then, but now they look like there was no reason to run it. It actually goes out of the way.
No, I was on that resident advisor committee and they stacked it with all these old people. And I was the young guy. And I was like yelling and screaming. And all the old people are like, you know what? Just let them put it in because we just don't want them to like take it out and then we get nothing. This was the attitude. Like we just got to take what they'll give us because then they might stop it and we'll get nothing, which is a total poverty mentality.
The black community calls it slave mentality.
Yeah.
Better than nothing.
But I'm telling you, dude, I watched it happen.
Yeah.
I have this other story with the MTA, and I hope I don't try to get a grant later and then they like blackball me because I tell the story. But in my shopping center, now remember, I'm involved, okay?
Yeah.
I'm as involved in East LA as anybody. Like I'm in the mix. I'm at every meeting. I'm there. And one of my friends, who is the mayor of Monterey Park at the time, she calls me and she says, "Hey, Ron, I see your street, Mednick, on the agenda of this MTA meeting in Monterey Park. Maybe you should come." So I go to the meeting in Monterey Park. And the meeting in Monterey Park is about a light rail extension that's going up Mednick, which is my street where my shopping center is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I'm like, why didn't you have the meeting in East LA? Because it affects East LA. Well, we knew exactly why. Because they were trying to sweep it under the rug so they could say they did community outreach when there was no outreach and get whatever it is passed. So then the next meeting's in Pasadena, which is going over the same thing. It's a light rail line from 3rd Street up Mednick Avenue to Cal State LA through unincorporated East LA. So they have a meeting in Monterey Park. Now they have a meeting in Pasadena. At the meeting in Pasadena, they have this big visual showing the existing use, which was my shopping center. And they have the proposed use, which is this above ground light rail thing going right from the middle of the street. But they would take my shopping center by eminent domain. This is straight up dirtiness, okay?
Wait, eminent domain, do you get money or anything?
Yeah, you get money, but it wasn't even about me. I would have made out like a bandit. But this isn't even about me. This is about like, I could have taken that money with preferred tax like advantages and rode off into the sunset. This is not about me. So I'm there and I'm going like crazy. Okay. So I get up there and I'm yelling, screaming on the mic. All these people from Pasadena, they don't know me. They don't care. They just know that they don't want the 710 freeway going through their neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
So I demand a public hearing in East LA, and then we go back, and they have to do it because I demanded on the mic. And the public meeting that was in East LA, like it was one of those Braveheart moments, and I'm Braveheart. I'm like the Asian Braveheart. And I invited hundreds of people to this thing, and everyone is just mad. Like picture like all the Mexican grandmas and all these people in East LA, and they're just mad. And I'm like, those people, like the MTA, I'm like, how many of you guys enjoy the free Wi-Fi at Coffee Bean, which is one of my tenants? And everybody raised their hand. I'm like, those people are trying to take away your free Wi-Fi. Those people lied to me because I was on the MTA rack. If anybody should be in the know, I should be in the know. And they did the dirty and had these meetings with no notice in these other cities to try to, and I was like, whoever supports this is against East LA. Whoever supports this is like a traitor to East LA. And I got everybody so riled up. And I'm like, whoever politician supports this, you're evil and you should resign immediately. Like, you're against East LA. Like, me and my family, the things we built were for the community. Like, I was like, because I was just mad. I didn't even care who I got upset. I was just mad because, like, you don't think people would be that dirty, but it was dirty. It was straight up dirty politics, you know? And it worked because the politicians that were supporting it, everybody backed out. The whole thing just died.
Good.
But you don't think that there's bad actors. A good example right now, what's going on is the weed industry. The weed industry is all over East LA. And they're running these ads that say local cannabis from the neighborhood for the neighborhood or something like that. And they're portraying it like it's like Mrs. Sanchez and her two sons selling weed that live around the corner and everybody's going to be happy and it's going to cure glaucoma. No, it's whoever from the valley or from the west side that's this gigantic, mini hungry person that's there to rape and pillage East LA and take all the money with no accountability. And then they're playing this game where it's technically still illegal, but they're opening these illegal weed shops. But at the same time, they're saying, oh, when you make it legal, we're going to play by the rules, even though they're doing it illegally right now with impunity.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's, you want to think the best of people, but there's bad actors that try to take advantage of a lot of people. And you sell it. So East LA Jiu Jitsu, I wanted to do it as a nonprofit, and I wanted to do it with high integrity. And I wanted to show everybody that we're there as a giver and not as a taker. Because traditionally, people come to East LA to take. Whether it's the other cities around East LA that cherry pick the best parts of East LA. Like, for example, East LA College is in the city of Monterey Park. Some of the biggest shopping centers in East LA are actually in Commerce because Commerce took those parts because they make money.
So those taxes go to them.
Correct.
Ew.
The only parts of East LA that are left are the parts that nobody wants.
Yet.
Yeah. So I wanted to come there expressly to give and not to take. Because people there are even though I'm from East LA, people there are naturally distrustful of outsiders because they have very good reason to be, because people come in and take.
Yeah.
And they lie. The MTA is a great example of that. They're liars. Their whole process of building their light rail is they have these teams, and once one team is done, they completely switch leadership. So that way when the people get mad at whatever happened before, they could be like, oh, we're so sorry about that, but that was his other team.
Yeah, I had nothing to do with that.
No, but I'll go out on a limb and say it's designed that way.
Oh no, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. My wife is a conspiracy theorist, but but when you look at it, you're like, man, how could it not be designed that way? But so I do what I do now.
Wait, hold on, real quick before you go to what you do now. How did the idea? Where did it come from? The inception of it.
So when I started jiu-jitsu, pretty much early on, I'd say blue belt. I'm like, I want to do a school in East LA one day.
Was a non-profit already floating through your head?
I didn't really understand. It wasn't necessarily nonprofit. It's just I wanted to do a school there. During the pandemic, I went to this market, and you know how Latino people, they kiss each other. They're always super friendly. And I went to this market and nobody was talking to each other. Everybody's wearing masks, and it was like a ghost town. And everybody was so sad. And I'm like, man, East LA is just going to hell in a handbasket. And then I realized, like, I can either complain about it or I could do something about it. And that's when I was like, I'm going to open a nonprofit jiu-jitsu school. For the reasons that I said. The reason why nonprofit was prominent in my mind then is because just the only way you send a clear message of we're not here to take is you have to be overtly a giver. And I think everything in my life, my philosophy in business, everything like post 2016 was it's like, it's the grace of God, and everything I do is in gratitude to the grace of God. So yeah, it kind of fell in line with that vision. And my plan was I was going to raise all this money. And then I talked to a buddy of mine, and he's like, well, if this is a venture of faith, where's your faith? And I'm like, you know what? Touche. So I went down there and I signed a lease in the name of one of my other companies. This is before I had the nonprofit formed, before I had any money. And I just signed the lease. And I'm like, okay, well, now we're going to do it because we're committed. And then we had a little lunch at one of my students, dinner at one of my students' house. We raised a little bit of money, and then we formed the nonprofit, and we were off to the races. But it wasn't nearly the money we needed, and God just miraculously provided. Like, an acquaintance of mine stepped up, not a friend, an acquaintance, stepped up and did all the construction. Like, people just came out of the woodworks, and we made it happen. People, one of my buddies that I went to church with, Scott Torres, I mentioned it to him, and he's like, I'll do it with you. So it was him and I teaching all the classes in the beginning, and it just rolled from there. That's all I could say. It's like the grace of God. It wasn't like this master plan with this bulletproof business plan and marketing plan. Like all the students we have 250 students, plus another 100 or so in all these school programs. We don't advertise at all. All those people came from like, my cousin Chewy told me that their kids train there, or, like, oh, we saw it when we were driving by.
Yeah.
So it's miraculous. It's totally miraculous.
Yeah. That's, I could say of East LA, I've taught there for a few years in the past. And, I was wanting to see if you could kind of describe the community, because I've heard of East LA and you hear stereotypical things and you hear, just wide spectrum, especially people who are proud from there. It's like, oh, no, it's great. And other people are like, dude, there's some challenges. Like, I know when I went there as a teacher and I was in Southgate, that's East LA, right? Southgate?
It's technically not East LA. It's on the southeast side, but it's not East LA.
Okay.
East LA is technically unincorporated Los Angeles County. So it's the city of East LA, and then right next to the city of LA. There's a certain part east of the LA River, which is not any city. It's unincorporated Los Angeles County, nestled between Monterey Park and Commerce and the city of LA.
Okay, got it. Yeah, because
Montebello.
Because I'm not familiar with that area. I was commuting in an hour each direction, unless there's traffic, right? And it goes up from there. And just the kids there, they refer to it as East LA. So I don't know if that was just...
So it's the east side, but it's not... What makes East LA proper so unique is it really has no representative government. So Los Angeles County has 5 supervisors that cover everywhere from the beach to the San Fernando Valley to Pomona.
How do you have unincorporated land in the middle of a city or cities?
The county, because nobody wants it. It's a liability.
Okay.
You don't get any tax base. You have mom and pop retail that don't pay any sales tax. You have old houses that have been passed down generationally, so there's no increase in property tax. So you have this huge drain from fire, police, schools, and really no way to generate revenue. It's it's a huge black market economy. I mean, you go to parts of East LA, it looks like a swap meet. Everybody's selling food on the sidewalk. Everybody's selling used stuff. You think they're paying sales tax?
I don't know. Well, my sister used to live in Paris, California. You know where Paris is? And dude, all over Paris, there'd be full restaurants in the front yard. People say, but the food's amazing, dude. Like, it's good stuff. But there was a school out there that I was at, and it was in Southgate, and the school was surrounded by very large. It looked like a prison, The campus didn't on site, but just if you looked at it from the outside, it looked like a prison. Tall, thick steel bars, not fence.
Sure.
And I think I had mentioned this to you, that there was just like drug addicts and all kinds of people leaning up against the fence, laid out on the sidewalk, passed out. The kids are stepping over them. But the thing is that really got to me is I got to know the students when I was teaching there. And, coming from a rough past myself, it was triggering to me to see the level of, it's not just poverty, but dysfunction. Like some of the kids, let me say one thing first. Let me see some positives here. There's a lot, the Mexican families that are from, I don't know if they're from Mexico, but it seemed the way, the ones from Mexico, the mom and dad are in the house, actually, and they have actually good structure. And I noticed that they would always call me Mister. Like, excuse me, Mister.
Yeah.
You running that?
Oh, big time.
Yeah, yes.
I would say, what's my name? Coach Ron. I'm like, then call me Coach Ron. I'm like, hey, kid, you. I'm like, do you like that? I'm like, what's your name? He's like, Luis. Okay, then I call you Luis. Don't call me Mister.
Yeah, they're calling it like,
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mister. Like, it just seemed like very respectful. So a lot of them have structure, but even at that point, like maybe because of whatever their status, they're not in the public assistance, so they're on the being paid under the table. So the kid works also outside of school. You got that all the way to just kids. They're living on, their parents are gang members, and they're good kids with no parents. Have you ever come across that, right? Like a really good kid.
Oh, big time.
Yeah, and you're like, I hope this kid could hold on till adulthood, because you're just like, how long is he going to make it? And so I even made it a point to drive around the neighborhood to check it out. And it's very, I think people need to know, because when people think of poverty, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this thought together. I didn't even think about the question ahead of time. But in your school, I believe, like I actually sent students there. I believe that it's something that's needed. Like it's not like because those types of things aren't available in that area, especially to that demographic. And I think that it's needed. And like I think you mentioned, we talked outside of here of you opening a second location.
Yes.
In Boyle Heights.
Correct.
And
opening in January.
And how far is that from Skid Row?
It's probably mile and a half.
Mile and a half. So that's pretty close, right? You're going to get some kids, and it's right next to public housing, right?
Yeah, it's under public housing.
Okay, it's under public housing. So that demographic there, can you just tell more about the community? And because there's positive, we always know there's positive. There's mom and pops, there's good things, but there's things that these kids are facing that I think the average American has no idea.
No.
Yeah. So can you maybe touch on that?
So I'll paint a picture. So before, let's say you have hardworking first or second generation parents, and they don't want you running the streets. So they keep you home. And you're home, you play with your brothers and sisters, you play with a couple neighborhood friends that they trust, and they keep you out of trouble until you're old enough where you're working or you're going to college, you're doing something. But the twist in this is now it's those same hardworking parents, and now you get, let's say you're a boy, and you get a phone when you're 9. So now you're in your room with your phone with unfettered access to the internet. So you're watching TikTok, you're watching porn, you're watching whatever else you want to watch because nobody knows what you're watching. Your parents just think you're safe in your room. So what that does is, to a 9-year-old boy, is it warps your mind. You become addicted to porn. Now you're angry. Now you're frustrated. Now you're super insecure. Let's take that same example for a girl. You're 9, and now you're watching TikTok and you're comparing yourself to everybody else out there that's photoshopped and filtered and fake, and you're totally insecure. So before home would be a safe place, now home is not a safe place because it's you and your phone and the internet's evil. And so what I saw coming in to East LA in 2021 is kids that were all masked up, that had no social skills, that were standing behind their mom with their mom looking at me saying, please help me because I don't know what to do because my kid is isolated and or angry and or super insecure, afraid to try anything new. They were dying on the vine. And what I love about what's going on in East LA Jiu Jitsu, it's not a transaction. It's not like, give me money and I'll teach Johnny to play the violin. It's like, we want to help you raise your sons and daughters. It's not jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is merely the vehicle, but it's our tagline is building character through jiu-jitsu. So it's like this sense of community, this sense of them coming back into reality and actually doing difficult things on a daily basis and overcoming hardship and overcoming this fear of failure in their minds and learning how to become a healthy part of a pack. Like you watch the show The Dog Whisperer, and they take the weird dog and they put him in the pack with the regular dogs, and the dog just kind of finds his place in the pack.
Yeah.
People are social creatures. So if you take kids and you put them in a pack, like one of the things we do before class is the kids just come on the mat and they play. And they usually play some form of tag. And it's funny because the kids will enforce rules on the new kids or the kid that's cheating, or, hey, it's freeze tag and we tagged him and he didn't stop. And they're like, yeah, and they'll make up these rules and then enforce them on each other. That's healthy socialization.
Yeah.
And the only thing I usually tell them is like, if you hurt the little kids, then I'm going to choke you. So there's little kids on the mat, and like, use self-control. But other than that, they're doing their thing. But it's like they're figuring out how to find their place in society. That's in our generation. Like, think about how hard it was to go find something to do in 1988. You had to go figure it out. You couldn't just, now you're like, you can go online and you can find whatever. You can find whoever. And so I think that, to go back to your point, who is East LA? What is East LA? East LA is a lot of hardworking people that want the same things everybody else wants. They want a better future for their kids. They want to utilize their full potential in their own careers. But the challenges that they have are, and I want to say this, anybody can do anything. Like, if you're in East LA and you want to rule the world, you can rule the world. The man is not keeping you down. You can go rule the world. But you have to, first of all, you have to understand that you are capable of ruling the world. And then you have to understand that maybe some of your friends don't want to rule the world and they have a vested interest in keeping you sitting right next to them doing nothing, because if you go rule the world, it'll remind them of how they're not reaching their full potential. So I think what we do in East LA Jiu Jitsu is we're like, if you want to be excellent, here's some examples of excellence. Here's some models of excellence from East LA, from outside of East LA. Here's a path to excellence. Here's where we remind you that you're not a victim. Here's where we remind you to not make excuses. Here's where we remind you that if you want this excellent life, you better work super hard, because there's a reason why average people are average.
Yeah.
But I think East LA, like, there's no secret sauce. But the one commodity that we do have there is we have trust, because they know that we're there for them, and they implicitly trust us, and we're all in this together as a family. We're raising all these kids together, and that means something, because when the parents know it and my staff knows it and the kids know it, there's no safe harbor. The beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu, the best trainings are when there's even numbers of guys and there's no easy roll. And you go in there and you're just like, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's, I'm not picking the rolls. They're picking me, and it is what it is, and I just got to go deal with it.
Yeah.
And there's 10 rounds, and I'm 4 in, and I'm tired, and it just is what it is. I love that. I love that about jiu-jitsu, because you just got to go deal with it. And for these kids where it's like, I know your mom and she knows me, and we're all talking about everything, and I'm going to see you 3 times this week, and I can socially engineer your misery or not, and everybody knows it. When I mean socially engineer, I can, some of these kids just need to get smashed.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite things to do is I put the kid that's overconfident right in front of his overbearing mom, and I just have this little girl just smash him over and over again. It's like the mom's like, can't do anything, and the kid can't do anything, and it's like, well, Johnny, you're learning a lesson.
Yeah.
That you thought you're the man, but Sheila's the man. You're not the man. So you better like pay attention.
Yeah, you're here to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to his mom, it's like, well, he needs to learn how to become a young man of character, because you can't save him. And that's not done in a mean-spirited way. That's just, it's like, you know, when you're 7 and your mom comes and saves you, it's great. When you're 12 and your mom comes and saves you, it's horrific. And you don't want to learn, the mom doesn't want to learn that at 12. She wants to recognize that when he's 9 or 8 or whatever, and start like loosening the strings so that he can actually learn consequences and become the man that God wants him to be, and not just have his mom fight his battles for him, you know?
Yeah.
So it's these life lessons, but it's built on this community of trust. And in an environment like East LA, where people don't naturally trust people, it's spectacular. The results are amazing, because there's this buy-in from everybody in the room, like, yeah, we're all doing this together. And it's like I had these ballasts in my lights go out the other day, and a dad came and fixed them, you know? And one day the gym was particularly kind of hammered, and these ladies got together and they set up a clean schedule, and they came in and they cleaned. It's like community.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it for money. They do it because they want to do it, you know?
Yeah.
Like somebody has a birthday and the dad brings in cupcakes for all the kids because it's somebody's birthday. It's like, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. They want it there.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it starts with this idea that we're there to serve you. Even though we're not a Christian jiu-jitsu school, the values come from their biblical values. What's the fruit of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control, right? That's our values. Those are the character traits that we're instilling in the kids.
Yeah. When I went there, I was blown away, because I know those kids, they need that. You know, they need something. The school I was at, I remember I used to joke about the field, the track field there. It looked like the prison field from The Longest Yard. You know, the football field. It just looked old and beat up. They didn't have any sports or activities. A lot of kids, they just what do you call it? Loiter. You know, I don't know what the right word is now. Hang out after school. There's nothing to do. And that was a problem I had growing up too. When you have nothing to do, that's like, you know what they say, idle minds, the devil's playground, that old saying. you've given them something, and the cool thing about it is that in addition to those lessons that you're instilling in them, there's goals. Like it gives an opportunity to win something. You can go to a tournament and win, or you can compete at least, or you could be a part of something. You know, like we had mentioned last week. Like, all right, I don't know if we talked about it or if I said it when I was talking there. It gives you a tribe. This is our thing, and this is what we do. And it's, as you know, your jiu-jitsu family is like a step family. You know, you look after each other outside of the gym. They probably made friendships in there that would have never occurred if that gym wasn't there.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole group of guys that train together every day. You know, even on Saturdays after open mat, they stay in there and they train MMA by themselves. Like, because they want to learn MMA. So then I brought Dominic, actually, came in and taught a striking class this last Saturday. But,
Yeah.
I mean, you rolled with some of those kids. They're good.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a funny story. So my other gym, Ethos, you know, sometimes you get people and they're looking for the easy road, right? And so when we first opened, we had people come and visit from other gyms, but from Ethos as well. And in your mind, you're like, oh, it's a brand new gym. They're all white belts, a lot of kids, teens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go in there and have fun. But they're all easy rolls. But I have you rolled with the 2 or 3 stripe white belts. They're not easy.
No, they're athletic. They're going for it.
Yeah, you know, and it was funny because some of the color belts would look at me and they're like, what the heck is going on here? Because these kids were taking it to them, you know?
Yeah.
And they never get tired because they're not regular. They're not like white belts that play lacrosse and also train jiu-jitsu 2 times a week. These are kids like that have nothing else to do and they're training 6 times a week. I got high school kids coming before school and then coming back and doing double classes at night. That's not normal.
And then thinking about it when they're at home, like, oh yeah, okay. Huh. Yeah, Professor Ron did this. Oh, I'm getting them tomorrow. I already know. I'm looking at it.
And then our guys, we have some of the best guys in jiu-jitsu. Haji Barbosa, Leo Villela, Felipe Pimentel. I mean, like they're like legit black belt guys, like competitors, you know, like Leo beat Colabate in the Worlds.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know, that's amazing.
You know, he's a super humble guy, great guy. Haji got 3rd in the Worlds this last year. You know? So it's like, but my point is,
those are some nice guys, actually.
yeah, but we're all committed to this cause, and it's like, oh, I knew what I was going to say. We're going to produce a world champion out of East LA. Not that I believe that the be-all, end-all to jiu-jitsu is competition. I could really care less. But just like Marcio Deduce, he's a coach he's Gabby Pisagna's coach. They all come from City of God, which is this favela in Rio. And when Gabby started winning everything, it created a lot of notoriety around his social project, which is doing tremendous things in City of God in Rio. And I've had him and Gabby on our mats before, and I really like his style, which again, he's a Christian teaching jiu-jitsu, but he's doing significant things in this community. And what he's doing is he's teaching jiu-jitsu to everybody and building character through jiu-jitsu, while simultaneously he's raising up really high-level competitors that are competing at the highest level, bringing more notoriety to his project, which brings all of the things that come with that, like funding and, you know, people that want to help. And I think that we're going to do the same thing with East LA. I think that it's only a matter of time.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I think it's going to be an extraordinary thing, not just for us, but for everybody in America. Like, I've had quite a few people reach out to me via Instagram and ask my opinion or my advice or even my mentorship on nonprofit jiu-jitsu, because I think that it's a good time to open this up in America, like it's very prevalent in Brazil.
Yeah.
You know, my prayer is that it doesn't get corrupted by bad actors that have mixed motives and dilute the space. And also my prayer is that it doesn't affect people, the ability for people that want to make money in the business of jiu-jitsu, which I'm a business person. I'm a capitalist. I think that if you work hard and you have a good product and a good culture, you should make money. I choose, even though I'm the founder of East LA Jiu Jitsu, I choose to be a volunteer, and I do that because I think it adds to the integrity of what we're doing. But if somebody wanted to do jiu-jitsu for a business, hey, go for it. So I wouldn't never want the nonprofit space to detract from all the people that want to do business. I just don't think that people aren't knocking down doors to go build, big gyms in East LA. So I don't think that I'm not taking away anybody's paycheck by doing what we do.
Yeah.
But I think that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I could envision a few years out, you'll have some, maybe even sooner than that. Like you don't know. I know with Nogi, you've had guys now in the ADCC that were blue belts winning, the black belt open championship.
Yeah.
So anything's possible. I know with the IBJJF, they got the belt system, they got to be strict, but Nogi, it's a wide open gate. And another cool thing about it too is that some of these tournaments are starting to pay a lot of money. You're starting to get millionaires out of the tournaments.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a good opportunity to for the kids, and I could totally see that because I wish there was something. Just imagine if that existed when you and I were kids.
No.
Could you imagine?
But like, let's play this out a little bit. So I have these students now that are white belts. Some are about to get their blue belts. But let's say they keep competing, and some have a path as a professional athlete. Some have a path as a coach. What about if we can go open up other nonprofit jiu-jitsu schools and other underserved communities, and now these kids now have a path to teach.
Yeah.
They have a path to being the owner of a small business. We're creating a friend of mine who's the CEO of this really large camp called Kids Across America. They run 6,000 people through their camp every summer. It's in Missouri. And through their 30 years, I think they've ran 150,000 kids through this camp. It's phenomenal. But he was saying, I'm really impressed. What's the word he used? He says the multi-generational impact that East LA Jiu Jitsu is having on the community, because it's kids and their parents. It's us teaching this idea of servanthood where the high school kids are helping with the kids' class.
Yeah.
They're volunteering. It's like, not, again, back to my earlier statement, it's not about them. It's like you have a responsibility to be this productive member of East LA, and that involves service. Like you're giving back to your community, not because anybody's paying you, but because that's what you should do. So we're changing the culture of East LA one person, one family at a time, which is how you change culture. I think nowadays it's like you have a bunch of people online complaining about this or that, or judging everybody, condemning everybody. It's like, no, we're living our lives, and how you change culture is let's say, for example, I'm very outspoken about not being a victim. Like, it's not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Donald Trump's fault. It's like, go work super hard at the things you're in control of and trust God on all the things you're not in control of. Be the person you should be. Surround yourself with the people you should surround yourself with, and you're going to be okay. You'll find your path in life, And I think that where was I going with that? When we understand I was going to go somewhere and I just totally spaced it.
Oh, we're talking about giving opportunities, like your students.
Oh yeah. So I can see this model where it's not even about jujitsu. Oh, for example, Boyle Heights Jiu-Jitsu, which we're opening in January. It's a real life startup. So what if I take 10 kids through every module of a startup, from the formation of the nonprofit to the accounting, to the marketing, to the operating systems, to all the regulations, to the team that you have, which is your accountant and your lawyer and your insurance guy. It's like going to college for an MBA, but you're using a real life startup with real life numbers, and you're teaching these kids business in real time. It's something that they're invested in.
Yeah, in entrepreneurship, you can't. I have a degree in business. You don't learn entrepreneurship there. You just learn. I didn't, at least. I just learned the basics. Like, I could probably go work in a cubicle for a large corporation, but to, like lease negotiations or like the real deal of it, or, just the things that you get from experience.
Right.
There's one thing from learning it in the textbook to actually in the ground.
Because I'm not hiding the ball.
Yeah.
I would be like, I would show you, this is how we do it. Like, we're not hiding behind the curtain. We're actually showing you, like, you made an illusion, this illustration before, of like the old school guys. They wouldn't actually show you jujitsu. They just beat you up. And then they're like, oh, it's time on the mat. They won't really tell you how to do it. But now you can like look it up online. Like, oh, that's how you pass this kind of guard, right? Or,
Yeah.
but it's the same way with I want them, if you're a business person. So we have this thing, and we do it a couple times a month, and you were one of those guys, where it's like, who's Kenny and what was his path to excellence? So you came on our mat, give a brief description of who you are, what you did. You talked about your faith, you talked about how jiu-jitsu's helped you, you talked about character things that you learned along the way, and gave some encouraging words to the kids. But it's this path to excellence. And I think we're doing it on a regular basis now. But what kids need is, they need to see Kenny's not any different from me,
Yeah.
but this was his path to excellence. And there's certain parallels, which was failure, learning from your mistakes, not giving up, surrounding yourself with the right kind of people, your mindset, your faith, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, if you can help one kid be like, oh, if Kenny did that, maybe I can do that too. So there's all of these other ancillary things besides jiu-jitsu that, in my opinion, make East LA Jiu Jitsu a special place. Where I'm at right now is, we launched in 22. We refined all of our systems and our processes in 23. In 24, we're scaling. And the second location is big. All these other programs that we have in the schools, because I have excellent relationships in East LA, and it's like, okay, we're doing this without grants or funding. It's like, if I, in your space with all your online audience, if there's somebody out there that like wants to invest in something, that wants to partner with us in doing significant things, like, if I had more funds, I got the ideas. I got ideas for days, I really do. And I have.
Would you say your mind's your style?
I got the idea, and I got the method of execution. I got the who, what, when, where, why. If somebody wanted to do that, I would. I think it's because it's a blue ocean out there of opportunity to help these kids. Like, I'll give you an example. Boyle Heights Jiu-Jitsu. It's in an affordable housing project, and all the families, the 66 families, the 130 kids that live directly above us, all came from homelessness. So it's not enough in East LA to be poor to get in this public housing now. You have to be poor and like living in your car or not living anywhere to get the nod, to get the apartment, right? So all these guys, all these families now are going to basically live above us, and all those kids have nothing to do. So I think those are going to be our first students. I know those are going to be our first students. But it's like, like we're going to make it happen either way, but I think that we're exploring sort of these corporate sponsors and corporate partners, but also too, it's not just about money. It's never been about money. And what I want is I want people that understand our vision and want to partner with us, because it's like it's in real time and there's full transparency, and we're not this large organization, so it's like you can actually build relationship with the people that you're helping, which is pretty cool. One of the things I love about jiu-jitsu is you can go roll with your heroes. I mean, like you mentioned Hamil Bahal earlier on, it's like going over, LeBron James's house and shooting hoops with LeBron James.
Yeah.
Who gets to do that? Like the people that have been on our mat, we had all these world champions and super significant hotshot jiu-jitsu guys on our mat, and rolling with the kids. And who gets to do that? That's the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So I think I would love partners that don't just want to just give money, but actually like want to understand what we're doing and be a part of what we're doing. That's would be cool.
How would people find you or find the school or just contact you? What information, what websites and social media handles do you have so that if someone's interested, they could find and learn more, contact you?
Sure. Well, we have Instagram. It's at East_LA_Jiu-Jitsu. Our website, eastlajiujitsu.org. They can look us up and call us. I will call anybody back that calls me. They want to have lunch. They want to come down and roll. Anybody from any affiliate, any academy is always welcome to come down and roll with us, roll with the kids and hang out, I am very particular though. Like integrity is super important to me. So if like somebody came off of, internet land and wanted to come volunteer, it probably wouldn't happen for a while because
You got to vet them.
yeah, like
that makes
there's no second chance with kids. So it's like, until we trust you, we don't trust you, so that's, I don't want like 20 people coming tomorrow being like, hey, Kenny said, come on down. It's like, yeah, it doesn't work that way. But yeah, I would love for people just to come down and check out what we're doing.
Yeah, I hope that people follow through with that too, because when they hear an idea or something, get excited about, they're excited about it, but Americans, we have very short attention spans. So next thing you know, we go, oh well, the presidential campaign's over, or what's the additives in our food? And people just get distracted and they forget about this real important thing that's going on. For me, I'm just give you a heads up. I am trying to work on some things. I have one guy who's willing to go out there. Well, he wants to meet you first. He's working on Wall Street actually, and he left Wall Street and got into jiu-jitsu, but he still does stock trading, but from California, and he has an amazing story. He's one of the episodes where I couldn't put on, but I'm gonna bring him back on. But crazy part is he's come over. This guy, his name's Haas. He's overcome a lot. He's had 3 open heart surgeries.
Oh my.
Yeah, he's 40. 3 open heart surgeries, big scar there, and he's living like in God's hands, like through faith, and he trains. He's a purple belt. He might be brown. I don't know. He's a purple belt, and yeah. So I was telling him about the school. Quite a few people contacting me about this place. So I'm just trying to, because some people just want to say, "Oh, that was awesome," but people who are serious, to see what's going on. But yeah, so cool.
What I'm realizing about you though is, everybody. Quite a lot of people.
No, you do. You're the one up there closing down trails. I mean, above ground train systems from what do you call it? What was that thing called? Light rail. Yeah, the light rail.
I know a lot of people in East LA, but a lot of people everywhere. But one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu though is everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
So you have to be who you should be all the time, because somebody knows somebody that knows somebody.
Yeah, it's easy to vet people pretty fast.
That's what I like about it though.
Yeah.
And it's like if you're legit, if I for lack of a better term, it's like,
Solid. Yeah.
you're not phony, you know?
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
that's what I like about that.
Yeah. I remember before when there was like in the United States, when I started, there was probably only like 3 black belts.
Mm.
So when you'd go to the tournaments and it'd be, they only went to purple belt division. That was like watching a black belt match. You could hear a pin drop. It'd be quiet. People were like, oh my God, watching purple, let's go.
One of the guys that came on our mat, his name is Ken Gabrielson.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was like the first Dirty Dozen guy. I know him because my black belt is Bill Tesh, and that was his first black belt.
Okay.
But he's like this super old school. I think he's a coral belt now.
Mm-hmm.
But what Ken said was back in the day, because I think he had the first school not owned by a Brazilian.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he didn't even teach his students points because unless you submitted your opponent, you'd lose. So he's like, he didn't even bother showing them points. They didn't even know what the points were.
Yeah, that was
You just go in there and try to submit them.
when I started the tournaments for submission, there was no points. I remember. Well, is he talking about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no points. That was the IBJJF thing that came along. There was no points, and it was just weird, man. It was wild, dude. Like I remember when I started, people were still going to jiu-jitsu schools and challenging the instructor from other martial arts. You know, like we do taekwondo on the street, and we don't think like, and we would just sit back and just watch them, go at it, like for real. It was like a karate movie. It was so crazy.
Has that ever happened to you when you owned your school? Like people come in and
Yes.
want to challenge
Yes.
jiu-jitsu?
Yeah. When I opened my school, because I had my school a long time ago, when I was in Gora Hills, I had a, oh, hold on. I could even go past that. I helped a guy. I'm supposed to say a guy because he was my friend at the time, but he turned out to be a dodgy business guy. So I helped him open up a school in Ukaipa, right? And it's weird because the students from Ukaipa, after the school dissolved, they kept training, and I ran this, well, you remember me? This and that. And it was weird because I was just teaching there as a blue, then purple belt, right? This guy came in. This happened twice. One time in front of my son. This father and son duo came in from, I don't even know, some whatever thing. And they challenged me. They challenged me the front right there. And to me, my background, just give you background. I like kicked box for years and all that other stuff. So I didn't care. I'm older now. I'm wiser. But I was like, whatever. Yeah, let's go at it. You really don't have to, back then, the people were so naive of jiu-jitsu. You could literally just grab someone and almost like a kid, throw them down. You didn't even have to do a takedown right. And you just choke them. You would just choke them out. So I would choke
Because they expected you to just stand with them.
Well, they knew jiu-jitsu. Well, yeah, they didn't understand jiu-jitsu, but yeah, you're right. They should have known. I mean, we have thick judo gis, and the gis weren't organized how they are now with these nice companies. Like our jiu-jitsu gis looked real weird back then. It's a long story. Some of them look very weird. Almost like MC Hammer pants. Like there's a company named Tora. They're not around, Tora gis. The pants, the crotch would hang like MC Hammer pants. Remember? You had stuff like that. But one of the worst ones I ever had where this guy came in, my son was there, and he said that he's a black belt, something, the art of the death touch, and that he could kill someone or this and that. And he actually had a backpack with like little weapons too. And I was like, hey, he goes, no, I just want to, and he's like, with all, just with all respect, sensei, I would like to challenge you. And I was like, all right. And I remember from standing, somehow I ended up on his back. He tried to do a front. Isn't that breakdance move where you do a front over, like a front flip, but you land on your back? But I'm on his back, so he wanted to land on me. He did that. I literally in the air just jumped off his back, and he landed on his back, and I landed right back on top of him. And I think I was going for like an Americana or something, and he just it was so tight just putting it on. But I was doing it at blue belt because the school was an extension of a black belts, and I was just running the class because there weren't a lot of colored belts. And but yeah, I even had to deal with it. But at black, and when I was in Gora Hills, yeah, people would come in and try.
Like from other arts.
Other arts.
Wow.
Yeah, but
that's like super old school.
Super old school. I think the worst I've ever seen. I got a friend of mine. He's on Facebook. His name's Pedro Carvalho. He's a black belt. He's one of the first black belts to come to the United States. Black Belt Magazine was there interviewing him, and someone came in, and this actually ended up in Black Belt Magazine. This guy went to challenge him, and he had a younger brother named Rodrigo, who was like 13 years old at the time, was a yellow belt, and some black belt in like Kempo or something challenged him. He goes, first you got to beat my brother. And this 13-year-old brother just wrecked him, man. And it was ended up in an article in Black Belt Magazine.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so but I don't think that happened. People are aware now.
Yeah.
Of it. So
When we first opened Ethos in 2016, I mean, we had people from other places. I mean, it wasn't other arts, but other places come in, and they want to see if your jiu-jitsu's good.
oh yeah.
One story is my partner and I, we were there, and these two guys come in. They just want to try the class. But you could tell right off the bat, their energy wasn't try the class. Their energy was like, do you guys suck at jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
And so it was just them and us, and we rolled for like, I don't know, 45 minutes or an hour or whatever it was. And after we're like, okay, bye. And they leave or go down the stairs, and Jerry goes in the bathroom and throws that because he's going so hard. And I'm just like, that's so funny. Like, at least he didn't throw up when they were there.
Yeah.
But then one dude came back and actually signed up. So I guess,
really?
Yeah, I guess we represented jiu-jitsu.
Oh, that's good. Well, see, here's the crazy part. We got a guy at our gym, the head instructor. His name's Philip De La Monica. And Philip is like, he doesn't compete a lot, but when he does, he destroys people. Like when he's going to the Pan Ams, I think the average match at black belt for him was like 20 seconds.
Good Lord.
Yeah, he's a savage. And I've seen multi-world champions come to our gym to train their camp, and he's running and he's tapping them, and they're bigger, heavier weight or whatever.
And he's older too, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think he's approaching 40.
Dang.
And but he's very positive, very smiling all the time, even rolling with you smiling, like very happy. There's no ego there. But I'm glad that he's there running that school, because we've had a lot of people come in. We even had the Turkish judo team come in one time. From like one was a silver medalist, another was a gold medalist, heavyweights, and they wanted to learn jiu-jitsu humbly. And but fortunate, there's some guys that could represent the sport well. But that's a lot of pressure, though, right? Like, what kind of business do you open? Like, say if you open a restaurant, there's no chef that shows up and goes, listen, let's duel it out in the kitchen and see who's a better chef. Like, you have to know your stuff in jiu-jitsu.
So I think the two hardest parts of a school are the culture, because you have to control this culture and make it something that it's not naturally, which is a very caring, loving, nurturing culture, while simultaneously teaching people just to go super hard and fight.
Yeah.
But the second hardest part, now remember, I'm 55 years old. You got to represent jiu-jitsu. So whoever walks in that door, you have to represent jiu-jitsu. And it's a couple, like, we had some things in East LA, like people come in, and it's not like, they're not in this other art, but they're like wrestlers, or they're like, hey, I want to try the class. But then right away, you don't want to try the class. You want to see if jiu-jitsu works, And it's like, a couple of times I was the guy on it, and you're like, all right, like, I guess I got to represent jiu-jitsu. So it's like, and it's not easy sometimes because they're big and they're strong and they're going crazy.
And we're older, right? Like the fatigue kicks in quicker, right?
Yeah. And it's like, and you have to, like, but that's what I like about jiu-jitsu. It's like it means something.
Yeah.
Like you can't be like, okay, well, before we roll, you're 30 pounds heavier than me, and I'm like, I could be your dad.
And I rolled earlier today. They don't care.
No, there's none of that dialogue. It's just like, okay, let's go, right?
Do what I normally do when I've been in situations where people have come in from other schools and they'll train there, or I should actually teach at an MMA school. One thing I enjoy doing is leg locks. I go to leg locks quick. If I know, like, if I'm rolling with kids or, people who don't mean it, I could tell spazzy from someone who's really coming after me, I'll go to leg locks. Because most people, I would even say black belts, they're not good at leg locks. So I could get in there at least, and I feel safe enough for that. They're not going to leg lock me back. You know what I'm saying? I know enough. Hopefully I'm not going to eat my words one of these days, but I know enough to, if someone's leg locking me, I could defend myself to a certain degree. and get those in. But that's my cheat code. I'm like, I'm tired.
Yeah,
I'm
the
sore.
crazy people, you just want to end the fight because they're crazy. You
Yeah.
want to get hurt in the process.
Yeah. So that's what I do. I go to legs because everything else, it's upper body. And I'm like, it's a lot of work. So
I go to their back and just hold on until they get tired.
that's my, yeah.
And I choke them.
Yeah. That's smart. Yeah. And you know what? See, that's a wise move, right? Because, like, and I'm going to choke him when it's time, right? Because you don't want to burn it out. You ever think like that? Like,
I mean, it's like if they're working 5 times harder than me and they have all their adrenaline's going.
yeah.
If I just hang on and don't get knocked out for long enough, and you're gonna get tired, and then eventually I'll choke them.
Yeah, you know, I was talking to this guy. I can't remember what his name was. I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was talking to my guy at the gym. What I do sometimes too is I'll pass the guard, and you're on side control, and they don't want you to lift their arms up. I'll use my hips, bring it up, and I'm gonna let it go back down, and I'm gonna bring it back up again, and let them get a real good shoulder burn, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to mount. Let that shoulder burn out. So he's like, man, I didn't think I just go and go. I go, nah, dude, when you get older, you gotta learn to, cook the beans, man.
No, so I always tell the new guys that are older.
Uh-huh.
I said, what you have. There's a guy came in the other day. He was 39, ironically enough, which is the age I started. I said,
So he's young.
well, you're slower than the 19-year-old, but you're smarter than the 19-year-old.
Uh-huh.
I said, so when you understand that, and you can use that to your advantage, you'll actually enjoy jiu-jitsu more. You'll get less injured. But if you try to go toe-to-toe with the 19-year-old, you're going to get super exhausted and you're going to get injured and you're going to quit. So you have to play to your strengths. Your strengths are you have all these years of life experience and you can play this game so that you're going to play to your strengths.
Yeah.
Which is not how fast you are or how much gas you have in the tank.
Yeah, you got to set a trap.
Yeah.
Or wait for them to make a mistake.
Yeah, I always say this. If you had to fight somebody in the dark, would you rather fight them in your house or their house? They're like, in my house. It's like, yeah. You lead them into your dark kitchen, and then you pull the pot out because you know where the pot's headed, and you hit them in the head. They don't even know they're in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Because they're in the dark.
Yeah. And you know where to hide.
Yeah.
Even in the dark, you go, okay, I know they won't.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a good analogy. I'm going to use that. Yeah. So, yeah, I think we're approaching 3 hours here.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Well, it's been 2:40. So, yeah, and I'm going to train tonight. I don't know about you. Do you want to come to Irvine or are you going to head back?
Do I have a gi?
No, you don't need a gi. We provide the gi. You know how it is. I'll ask you what if you want to. It's up to you. But what's today? Tuesday? Yeah, and today's a good day too. Yeah, because I normally go on Monday and I skip Tuesday, but yesterday just didn't go well. I had a doctor's appointment and yeah, it just took up my whole day because the doctor's appointment led to another doctor's appointment. Like some other follow stuff. But yeah. So again, East LA Jiu Jitsu, and what's the website again?
EastLAJujitsu.org.
EastLAJujitsu.org, and guys, that's a nonprofit jiu-jitsu school. Go and check them out online. Is there a YouTube channel for that?
I think we do. It's pretty anemic, but it's there.
Okay.
But we have a lot of reels and stuff on Instagram.
Okay, so that's the
explains what we're
Instagram.
doing. Yes.
And the Instagram is East.
At East_LA_Jiu-Jitsu.
All right, cool. Is there anything else you wanted to plug before we bounce out of here that you want people to be aware of?
I would just say we're opening that Boyle Heights location in January, but I really welcome everybody to come down to our mat and see what we have going on, roll with our kids. I think it's a big inspiration too when the folks in East LA see that the greater, let's say jiu-jitsu folks, when the greater jiu-jitsu community is taking an interest in what we're doing, it's just nice to know that people out there care.
Yes.
And then we also have a used gi program. So somebody walks in and we take them as they are. So they pay what they can afford. And we also have a big used gi program. So if people can't afford a gi, we give them a gi. So if you have gis in good condition, preferably without patches, we take used gis as well.
Okay, cool.
And then also too, if people have, let's say your cousin's the manager of the Dodgers, you can get us Dodger tickets, or you can get us archery tickets, you can get us snowboarding tickets, anything like that. because we do a lot of activities to get the kids out of East LA, outside their comfort zone, and just do cool stuff. So maybe they know somebody that knows somebody that could give us a really cool experience. You know, let's say it's a guy that has a big manufacturing company or a big aerospace company, and we could do a field trip to show the kids what an aerospace company does and the careers in aerospace. So thinking outside the box, it's not just about money.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so man, that's good, dude. It's like it's more than just a jiu-jitsu school. It's like a school of life. Like
Yeah.
it's exposing them to a lot of things. Yeah, so definitely. Yeah, I didn't even think of that angle, dude, of just experiences.
Yeah.
You know, have they ever been deep sea fishing? Have you ever taken them deep sea fishing?
No?
Okay, because when I had my school, I took a bunch of people deep sea fishing.
So if somebody has I'm down for that.
Yeah, actually, my buddy who I told you, like all those cars back there, everything. His father-in-law runs a fishing boat. The fishing boats where they take people fishing. So yeah, we see about that because it's pretty. They'll like it. Have you ever been fishing in the ocean?
Yeah, I grew up fishing.
Okay, because it's different than freshwater. Like the ocean is like you're fighting it. It's a whole adventures kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've thrown up off of every island in California and Mexico.
Oh really?
Yeah.
You get seasick?
Oh yeah.
Oh man,
That's a
I don't even have to take Dramamine or anything. I'm a real man. I mean, that's neither here nor there, but I'm a real man. You know, I mean, just
it is what it
I'm
is. I
still
guess.
different like that. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Well, hey, Juan, thanks again for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule and driving way out here to South Orange County. East LA Jiu Jitsu, guys. So be sure to check it out.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Right on, guys.